Oh, you know what I love?
Sports.
Love sports.
Sports.
When it comes to Texas A&M.
Where are you getting this information?
Let me tell you.
Welcome to TexAgs.
TexAgs Live.
I feel like I should be listening to the theme song from the Jeffersons. You know, we're moving on up.
We will develop men, we will graduate players, and we will win championships on the field.
The best way for us to win is to do it together.
He is a guy that has gotten better and better and better. He's just got that dog in him.
It's been special. The 12th man this past week was unbelievable.
100% ready to go. It's been a long time coming, and I just can't wait to be out there.
That's why we play football in the SEC, trying to go get it done.
You know, if I'm betting on anybody, it's the Aggies.
And welcome into TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers in the Rollo Insurance Studio. It is the Go Hour, presented by The Warehouse at CC Creations. We plan to go with OB, who's in Alabama, for SEC Media Days here in a moment, but OB is still not connected with us, so we'll catch up with him in a moment. But my topic to start off today, obviously I want to hear about all the great things that Buzz Williams, Andy Garcia, and the crew, and Hayden Hefner had to say. They're in Alabama. Joni Taylor is going to speak later on today. Obviously, I want to get into that, but I have a topic football-wise that I'm going to open it up to the hotline, the Boss Firearms hotline, and I can open it up to the text line as well, the Little Sluggers text line. Do you think today's college football, the things that we're seeing here today, and I don't know if parity is the right word, but do you think today's college football, the reason that there isn't maybe a dominant force, and I know some folks down the road think that that team is going to be the dominant force, but because there isn't a dominant force in college football, is that because of the transfer portal and NIL? After a few years of the have-nots, let's say, or the haves losing folks that weren't necessarily starters and thinning out that talent pool, if you will, is that why we're seeing non-dominant performances from the teams that we're used to seeing? Like Georgia is now, there are cycles, right? It's not that every year Georgia and Alabama are guaranteed to be these championship-level teams. But in this instance, right, like Georgia just seems off this year. Alabama had their great moment against Georgia, at least for the first half and then to end the game. But they also have some issues, and that was kind of to be expected with the changing of Nick Saban. When you look around, though, who's the dominant force in college football? You want to say Oregon potentially? You want to say Texas potentially? I have to see more, but there isn't a team that this year is running away with it. Now, you do have a couple undefeated teams, so that fan base may find that commentary unfair. But I have not watched one single team yet that I'm like, oh, they are the clear-cut Alabama, they're the clear-cut Georgia of this generation of college football. And I think, for me, it is a byproduct of NIL and a byproduct of the transfer portal. You have coaches trying to establish their culture. So let's go to the Boss Firearms hotline and check in with OB, because, Olin, I don't know if you heard my commentary, but I'm basically asking, is today's world of college football, without a real dominant force, a byproduct of the last few years of NIL and, of course, of the transfer portal?
Well, I think the transfer portal has added more parity. Because you can get better faster. I don't know how much NIL, maybe it would seem to me that NIL on the surface should give the teams with resources more advantages. I don't know. That may be accurate. All that may be absolutely true. It's not possible that, that's just one of those years where there's not a dominant team. It happens every so often. I remember in 2007, for instance, that's the year LSU won the national championship with 2 losses. And so it happens sometimes. I'm not really sure, but that's a good theory, and it may be accurate.
Well, I just look at it as, I find the timing interesting. Look, what happened to Alabama, they lose their head coach. They bring in a really good one, right? And there's going to be a little bit of a drop-off. But they seem to have they're a lot more vulnerable than I remember. Last year they were pretty vulnerable, then they figured it out. So there's still plenty of time for that. Georgia, on the other hand, a team that I thought was the best team in college football last year. I really do believe that they were the best they maybe weren't the best college football team during the SEC championship game, but for the most part, I thought they were the best college football team. They do not seem like a program. Now, look, they lost some studs. There's no doubt about that. But they just don't seem like that same Georgia dominant force that we've gotten used to seeing since 2019.
Yeah, but, and again, I'm not discounting your theory. It may be absolutely right. But at the same time, I look at Georgia last year, and you were saying that, they looked like the best team, and they may very well have been. But then when you took Brock Bowers off that roster, when he got hurt and Lad Conkey got hurt, they were very, I don't want to say normal, but they just weren't as dominant. And now those guys aren't there. And, Oscar Delp may be a really good tight end, but he's not Brock Bowers. He's not going to be an early first-round pick. So, so I always say about five-star guys, the best one isn't, the next one isn't necessarily as good as the last one. And, Georgia's had some serious injuries in their offensive line. And so not NIL, but the transfer portal, I think one of the things that it's done to major programs like that, and this could be an issue that kind of supports what your theory is that you don't have as much depth.
Right.
Because you don't have to, if you're a good player, you don't have to stay on the roster and play behind somebody. You can transfer and start somewhere else. And maybe that's where we're seeing a difference, is that when Tate Rutledge, Georgia's probably best offensive line guard, when he gets hurt and taken out, maybe the next guy, what Alabama used to say, just next savage up. Maybe the next guy's just not quite as savage as he used to be.
OB, who do you think, there's a couple of options you can go with this, or you can say zero, but who seems to be the dominant force in college football? Because Texas undefeated, Oregon undefeated, Ohio State does have that close loss. Is there somebody that when you watch, like, they're clear-cut the best team in college football?
I don't think there is this year. I still, and maybe I'm just hard-headed and old and cantankerous, I still think Ohio State's probably the best team. And we talked about that yesterday. Why? You lose on the road, and you have some weird things happen that normally don't happen with you. But they went on the road and dang near won, and probably should have. And in a rematch, I think they'd win. I don't want to dismiss Texas. I just think Texas has to beat an opponent that has an offense with a pulse. Again, I was looking up who's the best quarterback Texas has faced. I think it may be Olin Buchanan at UTSA. But that changes this week. If Texas goes out and handles Georgia, and I don't even think they have to win, by double digits. You just go out and beat Georgia. Then I think that adds more validation to Texas being possibly the dominant team.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. My question is about Texas, and I don't want to turn this into a Texas segment, is I just need to see them do it against a higher level of team. No fault of their own. The schedule is what the schedule is, but now we'll find out. And by the way, I might take some points away. I won't take points away for beating Georgia ever, or at least this Kirby Smart era of Georgia football. But it just doesn't feel like the Georgia football we have seen in the past. And then you got Alabama and Tennessee. One of those two teams, I don't think they'll be eliminated from the playoffs, but at the end of this week, they're going to be a heartbeat away.
Well, if you get two losses, you're walking a tightrope in a hurricane, right? So you can't afford any more missteps, and it may be, over. I think Alabama will probably get more grace than Tennessee will with two losses, just because historically. But that's going to be an interesting matchup because Alabama's defense isn't nearly what it was supposed to be, and Tennessee's offense isn't nearly what it's supposed to be. So somebody is either going to get, completely exposed or, I guess vindicated.
Obi, talk to me a little bit about Alabama yesterday in SEC Media Days, talking to Buzz, talking to Anderson Garcia, Hayden Hefner. I guess the focus of your column was these mid-season slumps. Sometimes we see them early season, sometimes we see them mid-season, but these yearly slumps from a team that has been tournament worthy the last 3 years.
Yeah, I asked Buzz, I said, hey, your team has gotten, especially in the last 3 or 4 years, has gotten, every year they've gotten a little bit better. You went from being in the NIT to get into the NCAA tournament to winning a game in the NCAA tournament. What do you got to do to continue that trend, which would be, next to be playing on the second weekend and maybe beyond. And, it came from Buzz. He said, look, we got to figure out how to avoid he called it the slump. I was called the dip, whatever. And we know what those are. It was the 8-game losing streak one year. And one year is when it losing 3 out of 4, including a loss to Wofford in December. And then another year before that, I think it was a 5-game losing streak after having probably a mediocre close to December. So, and that's all valid. Hey, can you avoid those? Because if you do, we know how it works with the NCAA selection committee, and that's what that's what you should be talking about at Texas A&M this year. You should be talking about March because that's the only goal. This is a team that's ranked, as you know, 13th in the country coming into the season, and should, with everybody coming back, the only really significant contributor that you've lost is Boots Radford, and you bring in Zurich Phelps from SMU, who is averaging, kind of plays the same position, averaging 14.8 points last year, and so that's going to ease some of that. You bring in Pharrell Payne, who's probably going to be your best inside scoring threat since Josh Nebo. And, a guy, C.J. Wilshire from Nebraska, who's not going to be a star, but may be able to help you improve on from three-point range. And there's every reason to expect you to be much better. So if you can avoid those massive slumps that taint your record, well, then you're looking at, come to the selection committee, getting a higher seeding. And if you get a higher seeding, you get a higher matchup, more advantageous matchup. And your travel is closer, and all the things that you add the advantages of a higher seed, and that comes back to, can you avoid the droughts that keep you from being a top 4 seed perhaps than being a 7 or 9 or 10 or something like that.
Obi, I didn't hear the bite itself, so you can I guess humor me a little bit. How did Wade Taylor got compared to Michael Jackson? Tell me a little bit about that. Is that just about elevating his game every year?
Yeah, it's about Buzz Williams obviously being a fan of Michael Jackson, because he was talking about how Wade is so good and he keeps getting better. He says he's got like Michael Jackson. You start with the Jackson 5, and that was good. And then you go to, I can't remember what the next song was, Off the Wall or something like that. Hey, it got a little bit better. Then you're a Billie Jean. And then Thriller. It just keeps getting better and better and better. When you think maybe you've already gotten as good as it gets better. And he was saying that that's how Wade is. And, you say, hey, if he can be better than he was last year, it'll be tremendous.
I do agree with something you said a little while ago. Like, for this team, it's about March, and it's about advancing in March beyond the first round. And they were, a moment away from doing it last year against the University of Houston, who was an elite team, no doubt about that. But that has to be the goal. And a veteran team built the way they are, I think they can't have any drop-offs. So the little dips that you were talking about, sure, there's going to be 1 or 2 little minor ones. They can't have a big one this year, OB.
Yeah, and you know what? They got to avoid the slumps in games too, because how many games did we see last year where A&M got behind by double digits? We're even talking about the NCAA tournament against Houston, even though they also played in Houston early, and same thing where they got behind like 12 to 18 to sometimes 22, 23 points, and then they made these massive rallies, and sometimes they rallied to win like they did against Iowa State, but sometimes they rallied to get almost almost to pull it out, but they just quite fell short. Well, if you can avoid that too, that's another thing, obviously, that'll help you avoid the slumps in terms of losing streaks. And I think, I would think that Farrell Payne is all that he's supposed to be. I'm not saying he's going to come in and be a star player, but he gives him another dimension that they haven't, and that, hey, if nothing else, look, we can dump the ball inside, and this guy has the strength and the footwork to go in there and complement what A&M does on the perimeter and driving. So, again, we've heard the term Christmas in July. Well, where A&M is concerned, March Madness in October, you should be thinking that should be the conversation, because that's the standard this year. I mean, there's no reason not to just aspire to get into the NCAA tournament, but to expect to get there, and expect to get there with a pretty favorable seeding.
Hey, OB, was anything mentioned about free throws?
No, that didn't really come up. I thought they were pretty good with free throws at times. You know what? They were streaky in everything they did last year, and they were streaky at the free throw line. They were streaky at 3-point range. Sometimes they were the worst 3-point shooting team among the worst 3-point shooting teams in the country. And then what do you know? They would get hot and really raise that percentage. And we saw what they did against Nebraska and Wade Taylor and all the things that he did. So, but no, it was more of a big picture look at A&M for the most part.
And by the way, folks, we're going to have Buzz Williams on this show every Monday during the basketball season. I believe that starts that first Monday in November, so we'll keep you updated to that. By the way, all the coaches come on this show. Joni Taylor, Garrett Chadwell, you name it. All the coaches at Texas A&M have an open door to TexAgs Live. All right, let's open up the hotline, Boss Firearms Hotline, 979-693-1150. You can also text us on the Little Sluggers text line. That same number, 979-693-1150. We are currently in the Holistic Cool Zone, the Holistic Planning Cool Zone. The NFL recently became the last of the Big Four North American sports leagues to allow private equity firms to acquire ownership stakes in teams. And for years, professional sports investing was reserved for the ultra-wealthy. Not anymore. If you're interested in learning more about professional sports investing and determine it may be appropriate for you, Holistic Planning is your ticket. Go to investinprosports.com today. That is investinprosports.com today. Let's go behind the glass and talk to a freshly cut Nick Savage. Nick, good morning, buddy.
Howdy, good morning, y'all.
What's up, man?
Well, nothing much. I know you're going to talk about it a little bit more in the next segment, but, last week's slate of games lived up to the billing. We expected it was going to be a great weekend of games, and it was. This coming weekend, a lot more ranked matchups as well. That Alabama-Tennessee game looks to be a lot of fun. I think Arkansas plays LSU. That can kind of be a sneaky game in the SEC as well. So we've had a really, really good stretch of games these past 3 weeks. So this has been a very, very fun college football season, in my opinion.
For me, the most exciting game is A&M Mississippi State. And I'm not saying that just because I'm an Aggie fan, but with what's at stake this year, OB, with what it looks like, going back to that parody comment and just the state of college football, you can't take any week for granted, and if A&M just does their job this weekend and doesn't make mistakes, it's going to set up a mega showdown with LSU.
Yeah, A&M should win this game against Mississippi State. There's no doubt about that. You can look at the numbers. Everything points to it. Mississippi State struggles on defense. A&M should be able to capitalize there. They're not great on offense, but they do have a tendency to make big plays, or I should say the ability to make big plays. As they showed last week, A&M has the tendency to give up big plays, so that's kind of the one area where you're a little bit concerned. But and also going to, it's been talked about a lot. Just going to Starkville has been problematic, but they should win. I think the biggest the biggest danger, for lack of a better word, is that. Will you be looking ahead to LSU? But I think that also is the biggest danger for LSU. Are they going to be looking ahead to Texas A&M and going on the road at Arkansas, which Tennessee learned and A&M learned? Arkansas is a pretty good team.
Yeah.
If you're not completely focused on Arkansas, LSU will lose.
All right, let's do this. Let's the Aggies gather, not the Aggies. Aggies gather at the Angry Elephant, and Caitlin Torrance at the Angry Elephant News and Social Center. We got time for maybe a text. Caitlin, do you have something for us?
Yes, we have had some chatter about dominant forces on the YouTube site. Our friend Sandman, UT fan, says that he thinks the dominant forces this year are Texas, Ohio State, Oregon, UGA, and he says, are they invincible? No, but they are still dominant this far. Bama is also an honorable mention.
Of course he thinks Georgia is because they play Georgia this weekend and it makes him feel better. Look, Georgia may end up being a dominant force, but I just think that they've shown to be more vulnerable than I'm used to seeing. That's the bottom line.
I think Georgia is championship caliber and really, really, really good, but not as dominant. Look, 2 or 3 years ago, you go into a game and you knew Georgia was going to win. The other team really had no hope. Georgia was going to win the game, and everyone knew it, and they went undefeated, I think. And this year, they're really good, and you go into a game, you say, Georgia's, probably going to win this game. I'd bet on it, but it's not as sure a bet as it has been. So, yes, Georgia's still outstanding team. They're just not as dominant as they used to be.
All right, folks, I want you to go to prizepicks.com/TexAgs. Use the code TexAgs to receive $50 once you play $5 lineups at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily independent fantasy sports platform in North America. What you do is you're going to pick 2 to 6 guys, right? And their stat projections, more than or less than. Super simple, and it makes the games fun to watch. Even a game that you're not really invested in, you just have it on in the background. Now you get a little bit more invested. You want to see certain players get more than, or you certainly want to see certain players get less than. That's the whole point of it. So it makes it a little bit more fun, but then you're going to make some money on top of it. You can, by spending $10, you might be able to make $1,000. It is awesome, and it is Prize Picks. We're having a lot of fun playing it. Billy's playing it. Matthew Dawson's playing it. Luke Evangelist is playing it. Kate Nagley's playing it. Everybody's playing it. It's fantastic. Join us. PrizePicks.com/TexAgs. Use the code TexAgs to receive a guaranteed $50 once you play in $5 lineups. It is Prize Picks.
What's up, TexAgs? This commercial break is brought to you by my good friends over at Aggieland Chevrolet, the official automotive sponsor of TexAgs.com and me, Billy Lucci. Greg Gunn is the proud owner of Aggieland Chevrolet and invites you to visit the dealership to experience true Aggie hospitality. From their friendly staff to the experienced service team, Aggieland Chevrolet is TexAgs approved. Check out the dealership off of Highway 6 in Bryan or go to AggielandChevrolet.com and tell them Billy Lucci sent you by.
We are back here on TexAgs Live. We are presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We're in the Rollo Insurance Studio. It is the Go Hour presented by the Warehouse at CC Creations. He's Olin Buchanan. He's reporting live from Alabama. I'm obviously here in the Rollo Insurance Studio. I'm going to read this thought here from Mr. ESP1. He goes, Nuño, you make a lot of good points. Some questionable ones, though. Some good. I think that's the life of sports radio, right? Like, well, every once in a while we get a good take, but for the most part, What do you think?
I wonder what the questionable one is.
I don't know. I have a lot of questionable takes. I think maybe my fiery personality at times, I say things. So do you, by the way. That's why we get along so well.
Yeah, I have a lot of questionable takes, and usually the people question them are the bosses at TexAgs.
By the way, looking very good, my friend. I just, now that you're back on camera on the Boss Firearms Hotline, you're looking pretty good, pretty good.
Well, you have to look somewhat professional at these events.
Yeah, no, I get it. Hey, let's go through some games.
My shorts that everybody wants to make fun of.
Are you wearing shorts right now?
No.
Okay, that'd be weird. Let's get into the games.
Like Jake from State Farm. I got on khakis.
You got your khakis on?
Yeah.
Games you want to watch, OB. Let's start off with number 16, Indiana, hosting Nebraska.
Yeah, Indiana's undefeated, and they're kind of like the surprise team of college football, but who have they really beat? Nebraska's the best team they've ever played. Nebraska's 5-1, and I think that any major questions about Indiana can be answered with a win over Nebraska. I'm not saying Nebraska's a great team. They lost that game to Illinois, but they're the type of team. I mean, you're not going to beat them if you're not pretty good. So if you go out and beat Nebraska, Indiana proves that it's not just that they're that they're picking on guys that just can't fight back.
All right, what's the next one on the list, OB? Let's see. We've got number 6, Miami at Louisville. Miami has kind of escaped some losses, and this is a big one.
Yeah, look at Miami's schedule. The best team they've beaten might be Florida. And what does that tell you? And then they beat Virginia Tech when a call was reversed that was pretty controversial. Then they got away with, they had to rally from a big deficit to win at Cal, and they got some officiating help there. Louisville is a pretty good football team. They're at home, and Braun puts a good team out there. So I think it was Notre Dame that lost up at Louisville in a big game last year. I think Miami's going to be challenged. They could be on upset alert.
Yeah, they certainly can be. Let's go to the next one. Michigan, who's somehow still in the top 25, I think they're going to be an 8-win team when it's all said and done. At number 22, Illinois, that's been a fun team to watch this year.
Yeah, surprisingly, Brett Bielema has put something together. Yeah, I'm kind of with you on Michigan, 8-4, maybe even 7-5. I mean, that's just a horrifically bad offensive team, and Illinois is pretty good. So, but once again, it's one of those things where Illinois is beating Nebraska, as we talked about, so they have some validation. I think you're going against Michigan's name more than anything, and I know they're still pretty good on defense, but I would expect Illinois to actually win that game. And how often can you say that when Illinois and Michigan play? Yeah, no doubt about that. Let's go to the next one because I am super intrigued by this one. Alabama, number 7, at number 11, Tennessee. We kind of talked about it in the first segment, but the loser of this game is and Alabama, by the way, they have a tough stretch. I think their next 3 games are all against legit teams. I think LSU's on that list. I forget who's in the Missouri. So these next 3 are all against real teams. Yeah, and coming into the year, we kept hearing about Nico Amaliva, how great he's going to be, and all. He's only thrown for, I think, his best passing game this year might have been like 211 yards. He's and that high-powered Josh Heupel offense really hasn't been. They've been pretty good on defense, of course, and Alabama's defense has been so vulnerable, especially since the second half against Georgia. You pointed that out earlier this week. You know what? They give up 28 points, 34 points, something like that in the second half, or close to the second half, after getting up 28-0. And then they lose to Vanderbilt and giving up 40 points there. And then, well, I guess one of them was a pick six, one touchdown was. And then, quite frankly, was forced to escape against South Carolina. So this is an Alabama team that hasn't been that impressive. It's not as impressive as its record, but you could say the same thing about Tennessee, and it's a big game. Last time they were there, it was a great game that Tennessee won, I think, for the last play field goal. So it could be that kind of game again, but unlike that last game with Hendon Hooker when Tennessee won at the end, that just showed it was two great teams. We have to ask ourselves, is this a game matching just two overrated teams?
Yeah, let's do the last one. Texas in their mega showdown against Georgia. We talked a little bit about Georgia earlier. This is a game that I think we're going to know a lot more about both programs, which typically happens in big matchups, but I think Georgia will either say, hey, don't forget about us, we are a top 3 level team, and Texas is going to be the dominant force right now in college football by knocking off Georgia, or maybe they're going to show that maybe that schedule, I said maybe 22 times, that schedule that they opened up with isn't as tough as the real SEC.
Well, you're right on all those things. Here's the deal. Texas, all the hype and all the high rankings can be completely validated with a win over Georgia. Even if it's a 1-point win, it's validated. Georgia, again, like we talked about earlier, not as dominant as they've been in the past, but still championship caliber. Look, and let's face it, Georgia has proven to be much, much more I should say, put it this way, they're much more proven than Texas. Why? They've beaten Clemson. They played Alabama. They played Kentucky, which isn't great, but a team that you have to be ready to play. So Georgia has played tougher opponents. So their 5-1 record in some ways might be even more impressive, you could argue, than Texas's unbeaten record. But Georgia can reestablish itself as an absolute championship contender with a win. Texas can validate itself.
You hungry?
I'm always hungry, but I'm hungry right now. You know why I'm hungry? First of all, I haven't had breakfast. And secondly, as soon as you asked me that question, my first thought went to 1775.
Partially because I talk about them usually at this time. And the other part is because it's like it just calls you. Like it calls all of us. Once you have had it, it's like, like maybe that I don't even know what to compare it to. It'll be like you'll probably get yourself in trouble.
It's like the song of the siren, calling you. Come to me, Olin, eat my ribs. Come to me, Olin, taste my brisket.
What else can they taste?
Olin, bask in my queso mac and cheese.
There we go. I needed to hear that. See, now I feel like I need to go right now. I need to walk over there right now. The food is fantastic. You know that.
You gotta wait till tomorrow.
You got to wait till tomorrow. You know that they're open at 11 a.m. tomorrow.
If maybe I'll get away and be there as soon as they open.
I'd suggest getting there at 10:45. By the way, online ordering turns off at 10 a.m., so if you're thinking about catering, you better do it quickly. 8203 Raymond Stosser Parkway in College Station, 979-492-6241. It's 1775txbbq.com. All right, we're back here on TexAgs Live. We're presented by David Gardner's Jewelers in the Rollo Insurance Studio. Let's go to the Boss Firearms Hotline. Boss Firearms is Aggieland's premier gun and accessory shop. They've got all you need to build your next firearm. Check them out at bossfirearms.com. And with that, we have Mississippi State insider Brian Hadad. You can catch him on Sports Talk Mississippi from 3 to 6, Monday through Friday. Mr. Hadad, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good, David. How are you this morning?
Doing wonderful. Got Olin Buchanan in Alabama. And where are you today, Brian?
Just sitting here at home in Starkville.
Starkville.
Just, getting ready for another day.
Are you surprised, Brian, by the amount of trouble A&M has had when they go to Starkville?
Yes, because, I mean, you think about – let's take a look. The 2014 game, that was the first time that State hosted them and they won. That team, of course, for State would go on to be number one in the nation for a few weeks. That was a really, really good team. 2016, A&M was, fourth in the country. the playoff poll had just come out, and they come to Starkville to take on a Mississippi State team that wasn't very good that year. They finished 5-7, and State just was able to really dominate that game. I know A&M made it close early, but State led throughout. And then in 18, kind of the same thing. It was a Mississippi State team that had struggled a bit. A&M came in with some momentum, but State was able to dominate them in that game as well. And it's like, Nick Fitzgerald played a big role in that. For whatever reason, he was just Texas A&M kryptonite. Just had great games against the Aggies in all three of his starts against Texas A&M. And then, 2 years ago, that A&M team, I think we can both agree, was just flawed that came to Starkville. And State was pretty good that year. They ended up winning 9 games by the end of the season. So they've run into some good State teams. But at the same time, year in, year out, Texas A&M always has more talent than Mississippi State. They're always going to have a more high ceiling roster than the Bulldogs. So yeah, it's been definitely surprising that State's been able to have the upper hand in this series for the most part when it's been in Starkville.
Yeah, I think of Nick Fitzgerald. I don't even like to say the name. Is he the quarterback who shall be unnamed? So many nightmares come when you hear that name. So this look, obviously Mississippi State has been struggling. Defensively especially, but what does Michael Van Buren bring? Because I know he's a freshman and all these things, but hey, they were making some big plays last week against Georgia.
Yeah, he's an exciting young prospect for sure. He's a 4-star kid out of high school. It's fun to think about these guys playing against Texas and Georgia and now Texas A&M. And last year he was playing against a bunch of guys who were rushing Sig Ep this fall. He's been good though. Big arm. He's got some mobility. He's got some athleticism. But most importantly, he just played in 2 really tough environments. At Texas, at Georgia. Those are both top 5 teams. And he came out of it. Apparently, it looks like his confidence is intact. He's still playing, good football. So for a freshman to survive that gauntlet, I'm interested to see what he does this weekend at home in front of what should be a more friendly crowd, because I think he's got a lot of. We're about to have my friend Samson on with us here. I'm sorry, this is not Sam. This is Seamus. He just plays at a high level for a freshman. So I've been impressed with him, but he's got a long way to go, obviously.
Hey, Brian, help me understand this part of Mississippi State, because if you just look at box scores, right, you're like, hey, they're in these games, right? And that's the reality of it. I know they were down big to Georgia, but they found something in the second half. The first half in Austin, people thought it was going to be a blowout right away and ended up being a blowout. But it seems to me that this offense is kind of clicking since the quarterback change, and when they find something, they attack it.
And that's kind of the way I thought games would go for State this year. I knew that State was going to struggle defensively. They just, from a talent perspective, don't have a lot of guys there. And then, a brand new defensive coordinator who's never done it before. I didn't have high expectations for the defense. I thought that they would lose games in shootouts. But then the first, a couple of games against power team, or I say power, Toledo's not a power team, but they often struggled against Arizona State, against Toledo, and for the most part against Florida. They found a couple of things here and there, but they weren't great. And I don't necessarily know that the quarterback change is the reason for that, because I don't think Shapen was the problem for Mississippi State. But they are starting to get some things going in the running game that they didn't have before. They didn't run the ball well last week, but against Texas and Florida, they ran it okay. But more or less, the offense is just kind of rounding into form. I don't know if the offensive line is a big reason for that. You had 5 new starters on the offensive line. And they needed some time to get together. But at the same time, that line has not really played that great, especially in pass protection. They were okay last week, 2 weeks ago against Texas, or 3 weeks ago. Not great at all. So I don't really know. To answer your question, I guess I don't really know what the real reason is for the offense playing better. It just kind of is. And I think it's just a thing of they've gotten deeper into the season. They're getting more reps together, and they're starting to come together a little bit. But this weekend, if they have a bad weekend, I won't be completely surprised by it. A&M is good defensively. And I just feel like State's just a mixed bag. You don't really ever know what you're going to get with them.
Yeah, defensively, are they more vulnerable, in your opinion, to the passing game or the running game?
Yes.
Yeah, both of them. But which one?
This is just not a good defense, Olin. They lack talent first and foremost. Especially on the defensive line. And think about Mississippi State over the last 10 years with Fletcher Cox and Jeff Simmons and Chris Jones and all those guys, Montez Sweat. They don't have anybody like that on this defense whatsoever. And so you combine that with they just don't have they don't have a lot of SEC caliber guys on this defense. I don't know. Outside of maybe Isaac Smith, who's a good player, but he's not a great player. I don't know how many guys they have that would start at A&M on defense. I don't know that they have guys that would start for Kentucky or for South Carolina or for whoever you want to point out in the SEC. They're just talent poor this year. I love Mike Leach with all my heart, but at the same time, you guys know that defensive recruiting wasn't his highest priority. And so he left that to his staff, Arnett and those guys, and the results just kind of bear themselves out. And then when you bring in a new defensive coordinator that nobody had ever heard of in Coleman Hutzler, you don't have the success in the transfer portal that you need because players just don't know enough about him, didn't want to sign up for Mississippi State last year. It wasn't an NIL issue because they were able to get offensive guys, but they lack talent defensively. And it just shows up when you watch them play. Texas, people said, they played much better defensively. Texas had 35 points and 500 yards with, I like Arch Manning, good player, but he's their backup quarterback. Last week, Carson Beck was basically unstoppable. Georgia had 600 yards and 41 points last week, and that's with a red zone turnover. So, this game for me, if we want to talk in terms of can State beat Texas A&M, your first question is, can State score 40 points on Texas A&M? Because they're going to have to, because the defense is going to give up close to 40. There's just no getting around that.
Brian, last thing for you. If I were to set the over and under on 3.5 sacks for A&M on Mississippi State, right, on Van Buren, would you take the over or the under?
I would probably take the over, but like I said, they were better in pass protection last week. I don't know if that's a good thing for Mac Pounders or not. The normal starting left tackle. He was out last week with the flu, and then State's pass protection gets better. So I don't know if that's a Wally Pipp thing going to happen there or not with the true freshman Luke Wirt. But A&M is good up front. They have talent on that defensive line. I would expect them to get after Michael Van Buren on Saturday.
Appreciate you, sir. Thanks so much, Brian. We'll talk to you soon, buddy.
Anytime.
Brian Hadad there on the Boss Firearms Hotline. We'll hit a break. We'll come back, kind of digest that, and I'm going to read I'll have Caitlin read a nice little YouTube chat that I think OB will get a chuckle out of here in a moment. Let's talk about my dear friend, Roger Krieger. I think he's my dear friend. I haven't met him yet, but I'm going to meet him here in a few weeks when I go to the bird dog hunt there in Brady, Texas. He's going to be performing. He's going to be hanging out with us. I think he's hunting with us. It's going to be awesome. Live music, camaraderie from Aggie legend Roger Krieger there at the bird dog hunt, the TexAgs bird dog wing shoot, November 6th through 8th, Brady, Texas. It is a 2-night upland shoot with some Aggie legends. There'll be guided hunting, skeet shooting, axe throwing, cold beverages, fellowship, live music, and of course, it's just going to be a great time. It'll be my first official hunt. I'm actually going shooting later on today. That's a different topic for another day. But I'm looking forward to hanging out with everybody, and I hope you guys can check out the website and join us there at Bird Dog. birddogit.com/TXAGS hunt. That is birddogit.com/TXAGS hunt. That is the website. Go check it out. Remember, they're an Airbnb for hunters and ranchers. You got to check it out. birddogit.com. Everyone, David Nuño here in a moment right now for Snaps Clothing. They are the makers of the only official licensed Texas A&M Pearl Snap shirts. I'm wearing it right now. This is part of their Tailgater collection. It's built for game day. My friend Edgar over there is doing great work. You've got to check out the clothing. It's the Pearl Snaps. It's the cool look. It's kind of hip, but also Western. You'll love it, and they have great stuff there. They'll keep you comfortable as you're repping your Aggie gear, and it's the place to go to get it. Whether you're watching the game from home or tailgating before watching the stands, these shirts have you covered. Head to snapsclothing.com. That is snapsclothing.com to gear up for the season. TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Rollo Insurance Studio, Go Hour, presented by the Warehouse at CC Creations. Olin Buchanan is Alabama. This is the final segment for you in Alabama because you're coming back tonight, right?
Yeah. We're going to catch a plane. We're going to talk to Joni Taylor today.
Yep.
Couple players and put together a report on them, and then hightail it to the airport, fly into Houston. I get to sleep in my own bed tonight. And Thursday night, and then fly back out to Birmingham Friday, because we're going to be staying in Tuscaloosa Friday night, because that's about the closest place to Starkville that we could find a hotel room.
Yeah.
Fortunately, Alabama's out of town, so they're playing on the road and at Tennessee, so there are hotel room available in Tuscaloosa.
You made mention of it yesterday, but for our audience who didn't understand, the last time, was this for Mississippi State when they didn't have a rental car for us? Whatever.
Right.
And we got to the, and you had already,
Alabama game.
You pre-reserved it, right?
Yeah, I actually paid ahead of time too. Because, that was crazy. The only time in my life, as you remember, we had the keys in our hand and we're about to open the car, and the employee of the rent-a-car place that we'll never use, that O.J. Simpson used to work for, came out and said, "No, give us your keys back." And we were without transportation.
I remember that. We got very lucky because a lot of people were not lucky. We ended up going somewhere else that hooked us up quickly. So I want you to hear this comment on the YouTube chat because it had me chuckle a little bit. We go back to the Angry Elephant News and Social Center. Caitlin Torn, we've got some breaking news from practice. Right, Torniak?
Oh, yeah. Mr. ESP1 said, I heard Ags installed large speakers next to the practice field playing nothing but cowbells. According to staff, it's louder than the real thing.
Well, let me tell you.
OB,
right?
OB, let me stop you. You know that was a joke, right?
I wouldn't doubt it, though. Those cowbells. No, I mean, it's a joke, but I wouldn't doubt if you did that. That's what I'm saying is those cowbells are so loud that it just – I hear them like an hour after I leave the stadium.
Well, the reason I found it funny, and I'm sure you will when I start talking about it, Missouri last week, Brady Cook talking about the music that they're playing at practice is louder than the real thing. I think he learned quickly the difference.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's different. But I'm telling you, and I knew that the guy was being facetious, but I'm telling you, those cowbells. You've been to Starkville, right?
Yeah, I went with you.
Yeah, those. So what you need to do is you need to score early and often and just take them out. I remember I was there in 2012 when Johnny was running through them, and by the fourth quarter, I could literally hear one cowbell, one thing. Like one guy was just not going to give up, and it was just, I always thought it was like the last dying cow in the herd,
Yep.
Clang, clang, clang.
OB,
So hopefully it'll be like that on Saturday.
OB, have a great trip back. I'll see you tomorrow here in studio.
I look forward to it.
All right, man. Olin Buchanan there on the Bonds Firearms Hotline. When we come back on TexAgs Live, Johnny Harris. Brady, nice little thought there. He says Josh Pate is saying that Texas hasn't beat a top 5 team in Austin since 1999. Will it continue? Will it not? But this is going to be all about A&M here coming up next with Johnny Harris on TexAgs Live. We're back on TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers Rollo Insurance Studio. We're going to go to the Boss Firearms Hotline. We're joined by the Professor John Harris, Houston Texans sideline reporter and footballtakeover.com czar, editor, owner, you name it. Johnny, good morning, buddy.
Good morning, David. It is good to see you, my friend. How are you?
Great to see you, too. I brought up this topic with OB to start off the show, and I'd love your take on it because you study the game of football. And I have a feeling that the repercussions of NIL, transfer portal, over time has brought, and I don't know if parity is the right word, but maybe a non-dominant force currently in college football. You might argue that Texas is that dominant force, or Oregon or Ohio State that just lost. But I feel like there is no clear-cut dominant team. Now, that may change at the end of this weekend. If Texas takes care of business against Georgia, we have to start looking at them at that light, even though they are worthy, I think, of the number one spot. But overall, the expanded playoff format, I feel like it's anybody's game. Would it surprise you if Penn State won it all? If A&M won it all? If Georgia rallies at some point? And I feel like it's a byproduct, a long way of getting to my question, Johnny, or my thought, of NIL and of the transfer portal because of a lack of depth and just a different landscape in this sport that's taken a couple of years to really take hold.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I don't know ultimately if that'll end up being true, because I think there are probably a lot of people that are not within the SEC or the Big 12, and they look at the top 25 and go, well, look at us SEC teams and Big 10 teams. They're all there. But I do feel like NIL helps spread the wealth, if you will, and I guess do it legally. Whereas back in the day, it was, the bag man from, Opelousas, Mississippi, Florida, whatever, had the money to be able to get somebody to a school or whatever, went on behind closed doors. But I feel like with NIL, it kind of evens the playing field in some sense. Like, look at Oregon. And, Eugene, Oregon's a beautiful place. Never been there, but it's a beautiful place. But it's, connected to Nike. And now they get the guy in Dan Lanning that is the perfect person to kind of run their NIL and transfer portal stuff, because he's super aggressive. Sometimes probably a little bit more aggressive than he should be with NIL. And yeah, I know Oregon really started taking strides with Chip Kelly, but they've got more money than they know what to do with because of the connection with Nike. The facilities are incredible. So Oregon is going to end up being a school that, is in the mix. But is it going to ever be a dominant school? Because they have to have a national recruiting base. And so they've really got to go out and find their players from other places, and then they got to find their players in different ways. Well, they definitely have done that with NIL and transfer portal. So I think that's definitely going to be part of it. I don't know, just watching everybody this year, that I go, yeah, there's not a dominant team. I think there are some really, really good teams. Even Texas, I feel like, is the closest to a dominant team, but Michigan's not good. Oklahoma's horrid. So we'll find out this week what Texas is all about. I do think that Texas has done a really good job of mixing both the NIL and the transfer portal and four-year recruiting. You look up and they've got young dudes, like Colin Simmons off the edge, Anthony Hill Jr. is in his second year. They've also built a lot like an NFL team does, and that is at certain spots, we're going to sprinkle in some NIL and transfer portal guys, but we're going to go build guys. We're going to go find young dudes that we know we can build, especially on the offensive defensive line. And that, I think, is what Sark has done pretty well at the University of Texas. Now, can he continue it? I think so. I think that college teams cannot rely solely on transfer portal, i.e. Florida State. You can't do it. But I feel like the teams that master the four-year recruiting side of it with transfers, like an NFL team with the NFL draft and free agency, those are the teams that end up having some staying power for a while. It's not just one shot and here we go, kind of like it feels like at Ole Miss. Did it not feel like this past year at Ole Miss, like, man, they're just taking one shot at this thing? Did it feel like they were building anything? No, and I think that's the issue with the transfer portals. You really can't build something grand, you can build it maybe for a year, maybe two, depending on which transfers you get. But you're going to have teams that are going to dart in because, they're going to be alumni or people that want to give to the collective. Hey, let's take a run at this thing. Let's go. Let's get every transfer we can. And then they're in the mix for a year and then they're out of it. It's going to be which teams in this world can establish themselves and be that team year after year after year. And I think that's still to be determined which teams are going to do that. I think there's been too much change outside of NFL. Saban leaves Alabama. Kirby stays at Georgia. Sark is at Texas. So, you've had turnover at other places. Washington goes to the national championship game last year. They got to change coaches. They got to change the entire thing because everybody left. So I think there's a lot that goes into it, but I definitely feel like you guys are onto something, that NIL transfer portal are absolutely impacting the power of certain teams and where the power is in this new college football world.
Johnny, it's October the 16th, and A&M is a legitimate contender for the college football playoffs. And then there are some Aggies that don't want me to say that into existence because, hey, we got to take it 1 week at a time. But as a talk show host, I can talk about the entire season just like you can talk about the Texans being a potential Super Bowl level team. It may be a year before it's supposed to happen, but that's what the Cowboys said back when they won their first Super Bowl with Jimmy Johnson. And I'm not saying that A&M's getting into the playoffs. I'm just saying it is October the 16th. And they're going to be favored in every game that they play in, except for the Texas game. And we'll see where Texas is at the end of the year. And we'll see where A&M's at. But at least here, 6 games into the season, we can have a realistic discussion about it because they do control their destiny.
It's interesting because I think this is just my kind of gut reaction. I feel like Aggies remember 2014. I think it was 2014. Maybe it was 2015. But I know for a fact Texans fans remember 2012, and here's where I'm going with that. Well, it was 2015, right? When the Aggies they came out of their number one.
2016.
2016. They were number one, and the very first ranking came out in, October. And it was like, whoa. And at that point, you start to think, oh, man, what if we are in this 14 playoff? And then what happened the very next week? Went to Starkville and got beat. And I think that sits with fans. Like, they remember that. Like, man, we can't talk about all this. Remember 2016? So there's historical precedent in some sense. I mean, for the Texans, it's 2012. They came out of the gates 11-1. They went to New England. They wore the leather jackets and got the absolute you-know-what knocked out of them. And then it was the leather jackets' fault. It was Matt Schaub's arm's fault. It was Kubiak not get on the players' fault. And then all of a sudden they lose a couple games down the stretch. They lose the bye. And fans remember that. And then when it's said after the broadcast, and we said it, hey, man, we're 5-1 for the first time since 2012. You had Texans fans like, oh,
don't say that.
Man, I remember 2012. 2012 was oh my God, that was, don't bring that up. I think it's kind of the same with the Aggies. Like, the last time that they really were in they were mentioned in the playoff mix at, especially early, there was that 2016 year. Obviously the COVID year, they were in the mix. They never got to the 4 like they should have, but they were in the mix and they were playing well. But I think that 2016 experience of we were number one and then we went to Starkville and we got beat. And I think the thing about it is it's okay to talk about. It's okay to look at your team and go, man, this team is constructed differently. It's got a different mindset. It's got a different head coach. It's got a different vibe. I think that's okay to talk about. And it's all okay to talk about. I mean, that's what we do. That's why we're employed. And you look around college football, and I look at it this way, David. What team, whether it's on the schedule or not, because he's thinking about playoff, you never know who you're going to end up facing. But what team can you go, that team would beat A&M right now, I guarantee it. I mean, the way they played against Missouri, I don't know that you can say there is a team that absolutely unequivocally is going to beat A&M right now. Even Texas, because you know how it's like division games in the NFL. Whenever the Texans play the Jags, it's going to be a tough game. When the Texans play the Colts, it's going to be a tough game no matter what. Those teams might suck. They might be the 2 best teams in the league. That game is going to be a full-on brawl. Texas versus Texas A&M for the first time, that is going to be a full-on brawl. So you got to throw everything out the window for that one. So if you take Texas and put it aside, which team have you seen in college football this year where you go, oh, yeah, they would definitely beat Texas A&M? Definitely. Like, I'm going to Vegas and putting money on that team to beat Texas A&M in a one-off situation. Hell no. There isn't one. And I think that's why fans should feel excited, but at the same time understand, and I think they do, I think they also understand, hey, there's still a long season left. In 2016, I think is a great reminder of that. Like, it can happen tomorrow, Saturday, because you go back to Starkville. Now, the 2016 Bulldogs and the 2024 Bulldogs, different teams. But that's where A&M has to separate itself. A&M has to continue to play teams that it's better than and beat them by 3 touchdowns. It's got to play teams that it's equal to and beat them by a touchdown. That's how A&M is going to get itself into the playoff. And to your point, David, A&M's loss is to Notre Dame out of conference. So handle your business in conference, and you'll be right where you want to be in this whole playoff situation. But for any of us to say, well, we know how it's going to – we have no idea in this 12-team playoff world. Nobody really knows. But I know this. I know the team, and I know a lot of Aggies should feel this way, and a lot of Aggies probably do feel this way. That Aggie team that played Missouri can beat anybody in college football. Anywhere. College Station, Eugene, Tuscaloosa, doesn't matter. That Aggie team can beat anybody. And that is a good feeling, and that's what makes me feel like, yeah, playoff is definitely a possibility.
But then conventional wisdom will remind people, well, Kentucky almost beat Georgia, and South Carolina one week looks amazing, then the next week they struggle, and Mississippi State's been a place that A&M has lost. So, like, as a fan, I'm also cautious because I understand the SEC, and I think some of the new members of the SEC are starting to, they will at some point realize, oh man, there is no week off in the SEC. Even the bad teams can beat you.
Yeah, you mean like Oklahoma, finding out it's going to get spanked every single week now?
Yep.
Because Oklahoma is not a good football team, nor is it a good football program right now. Now, they got a lot of injuries, but that's a different story. But, yeah, absolutely, David. I think that's the lesson that fans learn. Oklahoma, I think it was some Oklahoma fan was popping off about winning in the SEC. Like, how hard is that? Come on, man. It's like in the NFL. I remember when Bill O'Brien came here, we had this conversation, and we already knew it. And I think Bill found it out very quickly. He knew it because he had been in the NFL. When you coach in college, everywhere other than the SEC, like, you're going to end up facing, at the time, a Rutgers, a Minnesota, teams that really weren't that good. You were going to have off weeks, and especially if you were a good program, you roll the balls out and you go beat somebody. I mean, I think about Nick Saban in Alabama. And what really made this come to mind was Mark Vandermeer. Mark and I talked about this a lot. Mark's the voice of the Texans, but he had been the voice of the Hurricanes. So in 2001, they were beating the hell out of everybody. And it was like the game was a game for about 4 or 5 minutes in the first quarter, and there was a blowout. So you didn't really have to get up every week. You could get up for Virginia Tech. You could get up for Florida State. You could get up for a team like Washington who had beat you the year before. But really, the 8 or 9 other games were just like, let's roll the balls out. 3 hours, we're out of here. We'll get ready for the next one. In the NFL, every game is that kind of game. And the SEC is that way. You look up and go, dang, we just beat Missouri. And yeah, Mississippi State isn't what it once was. But that Mississippi State team played a bit better against Georgia. Man, we got to gear up for that one. And then, like you said, you've got the, obviously Texas at the end. Everybody's going to get up for it. But in the SEC, there are no breaks. None whatsoever. Everybody thought Vanderbilt. I mean, look at Nick Saban on game day. It's every place is a hard place to play, but Vanderbilt. And then his former team gets beat at Vanderbilt. And now you look up and Diego Pavia is like the toast of the town. He's beating Kentucky in Kentucky. He's beating Alabama. I mean, there are no gimmies. And there are no gimmies in college football. And I think going back to our original point about NIL, transfer portal, et cetera, I think what's going to end up happening is you're not going to know in a given year which team is that patsy, which team is that one where you're like, okay, we know we've got this one, because it's going to probably change from year to year. like you said, Kentucky's a great example of that. Kentucky did a really nice job for a few years. They had defensive end Josh Allen. That defense was great. Then they brought on Will Levis, and they were kind of up and down, but, a hard team to play. Then this year, they give Georgia all they want, man. I mean, they give Georgia all they want, but then they got spanked by South Carolina. Then they get beat by Vanderbilt. So, what really is Kentucky? So the point being, I don't know from year to year if you're going to be able to figure out who that patsy is until it's too late in some sense. So you got to go out and every game, like it is in the NFL, you got to play. And I think what it also does, David, the other side of that is the champion of this conference is coming out with 1, maybe 2 losses from now on.
Yep. Johnny, you brought up something earlier, and I just want to kind of go back there because we have so much history in the market together in Houston. The 2014 Texans, I kind of want to go through the 2013 playoff and the 2014 just to see where you were mindset-wise, because I was a local newscaster, and when you're a local newscaster, sometimes you're an extension of the show The View, and you think things are certain things are cool. At the time, I thought the Letterman jackets were cool. Obviously, if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, the Texans made Letterman jackets, went to New England, and got spanked. And then the next season, they were expected to be amazing, and I believe they started 1-4. It should have been 0-5, but I think they beat San Diego late on a Monday Night Football game to start the season.
They started off 2-0, David. They beat San Diego, you're right, and then they beat the Titans. So they started off 2-0 in that season.
And then they lost the next
14 in a row. They went 2-14, and you can't explain it. It was 2013. It's one of the craziest years that I've ever seen in the NFL because you've got all this talent, and everything that could go wrong goes wrong, and you end up 2-14. And you look up at the end of the year, and you're like, God dang, we had J.J. Watt, we had Cushing was back for a little bit.
Andre Johnson, Matt Schaub.
DeAndre Hopkins was a rookie. We had J.J. and Kareem at corner. Like, how in the hell did this happen? And sometimes you can't explain it.
Well,
you really can't. It was injury here, it was injury there, but you're in every game. You got a 3-touchdown lead against the Colts with Case Keenum at quarterback. And then Gary Kubiak has to go to the hospital at halftime, and you end up blowing the lead in the second half. And for good reason. Your coach that you love just went to the hospital. You don't know whether he's dead or not. It was just like that all year. It was a weird bounce here, a crazy thing there, a penalty called that maybe isn't usually called. That's how close it is in the NFL. But the point, David, is it can be that close in the SEC too.
Yep.
One call, one thing that goes your way that doesn't go the other way. Like the other night, the LSU Ole Miss game, 4th and 5 at the end of the game. Ole Miss is getting skewered this week. They spent all that money, and now they got 2 losses. They're out of the playoffs. They're out of this, they're out of that. What if Nussmeier doesn't hit Anderson in the end zone? Ole Miss wins on the road at night in Baton Rouge. Yep. It's a great win, but he hits him. They then go to overtime. He hits Lacey to win it, and all of a sudden LSU is 5-1, and Ole Miss is like, we spent all this money for what? And it's that. And that's the way it is in the SEC, man. And that's why you always are kind of on guard with your team. Just go out and play your game. And play your game. And I think this A&M team, when it plays its game, doesn't make the silly mistakes. I think the team that played against Missouri, I don't even think that's its ceiling. And I think that's what's scary. And I think that's why it should absolutely be in the mix and be in the conversation. And it shouldn't scare people because they should be there. Because the way that Mike is building this, it's not all about transfers. There's Nick, but there are those 4-year players that he's getting from the high school ranks. They recruited Wigman. I mean, they've recruited other guys that have been part of this. And so I think that's going to continue. And especially the more success they have, it can end up being kind of that hot program.
Johnny, I got like 45 seconds, but I just want to leave you with this thought. During that losing streak that the Texans had, where Matt Schaub threw 4 consecutive games with a pick 6, which could have been 5. I think he almost had one against San Diego. But regardless, I remember after the Seattle loss, because they were about to win that game, and then he throws the Richard Sherman pick 6. I think it was Richard Sherman.
Yes.
My news director calls me. He's like, you have to ask the locker room if they have given up on Matt Schaub. And I was like, oh, man, this is not going to go well. And you know who my first person to talk to was? Arian.
Yeah. Oh.
And Arian was my guy. Arian took care of me. He was always good to me, but that was one of those days that he was not happy with my questioning. But that's kind of what we do, Johnny. Hey, I got to drop it there.
Yeah.
Appreciate your insight, man. Thank you for everything. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, your brother. Love it. See you, man.
See you, bro. The Professor John Harris on the Boss Firearms Hotline. We'll hit a break. We'll come back with Coach G. Right now, FBS Appliance and their team of experts are here to help you find the appliances that make your house a home. They have all the top brands, and they want to take care of you in the Brazos Valley and all over Texas. They pride themselves on offering a comprehensive solution that sets them apart from the competition. They specialize in providing top-notch sales and installation services. They have a commitment to customer satisfaction, and they are right down the road from us here at TexAgs. They're on Welborn, right down the road. You want to go check them out. 8 great showrooms across Texas, or find them online, factorybuilderstores.com. That is factorybuilderstores.com. And we are back on TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We're in the Rollo Insurance Studio. Coach G is in studio to talk a little Aggie soccer. Kind of a tough week, Coach G. But you brought me the standings, and I'm looking through it. That is just life. We talk about life in the SEC for football, life in the SEC for soccer right now. There's so many teams jam-packed between 4th and, I guess, 13th place.
Yeah, and with ourselves right now, in 6th place, and right now in a great position. The last mock draft I saw, as far as for the NCAA tournament, had us as a 8 seed, which is all right. But we have to win. We have to keep winning, and we have to keep winning in the SEC for the SEC tournament, which is in 2 weeks, and we've got to obviously keep winning for the NCAA tournament. And it really the paramount game is this Friday, right, at home against LSU for all the obvious reasons. LSU comes in as literally as a wounded tiger, but ourselves, we've been wounded as well because we've been dancing around injuries all season long, especially in our attack. But had a lot of injuries on our back line this past week, which really had an effect on us. So it's massive in the fact of we're a game over 500, which is unprecedented territory for us. We've got to get a result, and we've got to get our goal scoring going again. We've kept teams down as far as things go. Sid Fuller, who was the freshman of the week going into last week, coming off of a big win on the road against Ole Miss, wasn't able to play against Vandy. We lose 2-0 in that game. We're able to get her back on the field. She has a terrific game against Bama, but we don't score in that game. We lose 1-0 on the road, and really in that game had a lot of players, key players, go down in that game. A lot of players step up into new positions. Some of them had to play in different positions that they hadn't played before because of injuries to other players. Other players get in there. Olivia Fetter got in there and played, did a great job. She went down. Ella Goodwin stepped in, did a great job. Just kind of stepped in and was up for the fight and did a great job against some terrific Tide players in there. And one after the next, it was just kind of next player up, kept us in it. But again, we couldn't kind of break the seal on the other team's goal and got shut out twice, which is not typically the Texas A&M standard going forward. But again, we've got to find a way to. We're creating a lot of goal scoring chances. We're just not finishing those off, and a lot of that is just there are scoring goals is a specific skill. There's shooters and there's finishers. It's like there's
a mindset to that too, right?
Well, there's a mindset, but there's also there are sharpshooters and there are shooters, and you kind of think about that. There are like people who are absolute marksmen, and there are people who are shooters. Probably the shooters are the guys who have the gun sideways, right, and there are marksmen who are up there with a really calm heartbeat and stuff like that. And some of our calm heartbeats, we have those on our roster. They're just they're injured or they're out this year with injuries. They're on the roster. We're going to be smoking hot next year when they're back and fully healthy. But right now we've had other people who've had to step up into new roles, and a couple of them, for example, like Bree Severin, who is a grad transfer who's been kind of getting her back and ready. She finally is healthy, is back in training. We've been kind of getting her back onto the field. She's been out on the field the last 3 games, and like yesterday in training was fantastic. So we're hoping that she's kind of getting back into game speed. Same thing with Allie Lowry, has been kind of getting herself back into game speed. Kennedy Clark is somebody who has had to play in that role in different times, and she's a great setup person. But we're looking for people to also be the great finisher, and that's what we're going to need against a really, really solid, physical LSU team on Friday night. And there's some great promotions going on Friday night as well. Family night, there's hot dogs and $5 beers and all kinds of things going on. It's a 7 o'clock kickoff. Volleyball is going on at 8 o'clock, so you can come on over, park in one spot, soccer at 7, get over to volleyball right afterwards. But for us, it's hugely important. There's only 2 home games left.
Right.
Our game this week, and then next Sunday is our senior night, and then that's it. The regular season is over. So it's hugely important. This program is we're right there, and it's a big important weekend for us.
I know the players understand the urgency, but you look at LSU, they're wounded. They've lost 4 in a row. They're urgent as well.
Mm-hmm.
How hard is it? And I don't think it's hard, but this is, I don't know if must win is the right word, G, but you guys need this game. You have to have
it's must win.
It is a must win.
Well, they know that. They also know that, sure, we've done, you can look at both sides of the coin. We haven't been finishing, but we've been doing all these things that have been good right onto the doorstep. It's just a matter of, the old bum bright, kick it in,
right.
and literally kick it in. So we're trying to accentuate the positives on this and get it to where we are going to be doing those things repeatedly. We have to polish up the things that we're not doing quite as well as we can. Get the players who have been on the shelf.
Right.
We got to get them better, because whether it's this Friday or next week when we play 2 top 5 teams in the country in going on the road against Arkansas or home against Mississippi State. Those are the 2 teams at the top of the SEC table. They're also, like I said, 2 top 5 national teams. We got to get healthy for both those games too. And those are obviously going to be paramount in how the season finishes.
These young players that have been thrust into different positions and new positions and also just playing earlier than expected, right now it probably is, it feels tough for the team, but how much better are they going to be for going through this, especially when you have all your reinforcements back?
Well, I think right now, every experience can be a growth experience, and every experience can be something that becomes an experience that they can feed on, going forward. And there's always things that, again, you always learn from things, and we want these to be positive things of, look how I did this, and look at what happened because I was here and did it, and we won because of it. And winning is what we're looking to do. Also brought you some information there on, we're also involved in, I've got a whole team of people here locally with the Cavalry here in town. Charity golf event is coming up, and this is an event that is for local kids here in the Brazos Valley. Annually, we do a charity golf tournament that's going to be this year. Those of you who are here locally, you know that the Traditions Club has been closed. Mm-hmm. The golf course has been closed as they've been completely renovating it. It is going to be spectacular when it reopens, which is going to be before too long. One of the first events that's going to be going on is going to be our charity golf event, which is going to be on Monday, December 9th. And you can sign up now. All the money raised for that goes to helping local kids, local families. We usually raise about $70,000 to $80,000 out of this. All of that money stays right here in the Brazos Valley. If you'd like to sign up your team, go to, it's real simple, go to CoachGGolf.com. You can sign up your foursome. If you'd like to sponsor, get your company involved, get anything involved to help out local families. And what this is about is this helps local kids play competitive youth sports. And you think about all the positive examples. If you are an adult out there, think of all the positive things that you learned from playing competitive sports, all the positive life lessons you learned from being a part of team sports. That's what we're trying to teach. But playing competitive sports has become very expensive, and we don't want cost to be something that limits kids from kind of challenging financial backgrounds. We don't want that cost to be a part of something that keeps those kids from having those experiences. And that's what this has been able to do in the past. This helps out hundreds of families in the area. This is all about boys, so there's no separation for me as being my position here at Texas A&M. And it's a great cause. CoachGGolf.com will link you directly to it. And please come and help us out and help out these families here in the Brazos Valley.
We'll also have that up on our story on TexAgs.com. Coach G, thank you, sir. Good luck this week.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Right now we're talking Heritage Films. They make documentary films about families. They make it about family businesses, family ranches. If you have a family, there's no if. You have a family story. Why don't you tell it? Why don't you have it done in a 2-hour documentary style? We can even do a documentary on why I grew this beard this week. No reason to do it at all, but we did it. There's so many different types of stories that Chance McClain can do for you. Family business, family ranch, your grandfather, how he started the family business, whatever it may be. Let Chance tell that story in a 2-hour Netflix-style documentary. The website is yourheritagefilm.com, yourheritagefilm.com, 713-893-8341, 713-893-8341. Welcome back into TexAgs Live. We're presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We're in the Rollo Insurance studio, by the way. Rollo Insurance, the difference is real. They're an independent insurance company built around educating you on exactly what you're paying for, doing the shopping for you so that you can accomplish all of your insurance goals. They can write any form of insurance to anybody, and they've got 60 great offices in Texas, but their headquarters is on Highway 6. They do my insurance. They should do yours. They're fantastic. And because, I'm slow at everything I do, like everything, my twins are 16. They got their permits when at 16, not at 15, because I'm a bad dad. And they'll probably start driving when they're 36. But because of that, we're going to take our time finding the right insurance for our entire family because, 16-year-old insurance makes the price go up. So I'm talking to Morgan, my guy there, and we're getting hooked up. 888-44-ROLLO or ROLLOinsurance.com. That's 888-44-ROLLO, ROLLOinsurance.com. We go to the Boss Firearms hotline. Max Wright is with us. Mr. Wright, what's going on, buddy?
Not much. Had a good little bye week, getting to not stress about Aggie football, so I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good, man. You know what? It was nice to not stress out now for a couple of weeks, right? Because if you think about it, pretty much no stress against Missouri. A lot of stress against Arkansas, no stress against Missouri, and obviously a lot of fun on the bye week just to be able to watch college football as a fan.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the luxuries of having a good week before you go into a bye week is you feel good about the week before, and then now you're getting to watch other teams and getting to watch their fan bases freak out as games aren't maybe going the way that they thought. But man, it's been a good 2 weeks, and talking to some guys on the teams, they feel confident about where the team's at. They're excited. They feel rested, and also like they still made a lot of ground up this week and still made some good strides. So it's been a good 2 weeks.
I'm going to read you this text on the Little Sluggers text line that says, Aggie should embrace and not qualify or apologize for looking like an SEC title contender and thinking we have a good shot as anyone to get there. And I just kind of want you to talk about that for a moment because there's this caution, right? Like, I think we're really good, but we got to go to Starkville and win where we've struggled. And that all is true. But the information that we have right now, A&M looks to be a legit contender.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that week to week, they continue to prove that. I think that's the thing that we've been talking about since the beginning of the season is anytime that you have a new coach that comes in, you're going to see progression and growth more significantly than you maybe do with just other teams in the conference. I think it's absolutely right. We don't need to apologize for feeling that way. We don't need to, be kind of like tiptoeing around it. I think that everyone's starting to notice that, okay, that we just dominated the number 9 team in the country. We've been getting better every single week. We're 3-0 in SEC play against 3 really good SEC teams. I think that, we're consistently proving ourselves. And that's where I think you can start to be more confident in that conversation is week by week. Do we continue to come out and perform consistently? I think that's what you have to have whenever you're wanting to be an SEC contender, a title contender. So yeah, man, I think that looking forward, this team is definitely proving themselves to be a true contender for the SEC. And they're going to have some good matchups over the next weeks to continue to prove that.
Max, correct me if I'm wrong. I think you've played in Starkville twice. Does that sound right? One year you guys won 2020. 2021 was a comedy of errors in that first half, and that game just kind of got away. What makes that an interesting place to play from a player's perspective?
The cowbells.
Yeah.
To start off, I mean, it's a unique environment. It's a fun environment to play in, but man, those cowbells add a different type of noise level. It's a little obnoxious, to be honest. But I mean, it's a cool environment to play in, and it's a hard place to play sometimes, especially if you give them momentum. I think that's the thing. If those fans can get involved and they're adding on top of those loud cowbells and yelling with it, it can get pretty loud in there. But it's a fun place to play, and I've had some, good games in there, some really frustrating games in there. But I think that this next week it'll be a good weekend for the Aggies.
Talking to Max Wright here on TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. So in your experience in college football, at what point are you who you are? And I probably phrased that incorrectly, but there's still this if A&M can do this, this can happen. Is the team that we've been watching now 6 weeks of the season, is this who they are? They're going to be a smash-mouth football team. Sure, you can lose some games in the SEC, but this is who they are. And I think we have to wait a little bit on Connor's development this year because we've only seen him 3 times. But all that being said, is this who A&M is?
Yeah, I think that this is this is what Elko brings, and this is the culture that now A&M wants to be. I think that's. I mean, it fits our culture as who we are as Aggies too. Smash mouth football, hardworking. Getting to hear some of the people talk on during the Missouri game about us is we're a blue collar school. We're out there, hard workers. Putting in the time, doing what we need to do, and I think that's what our football team is trying to reflect is a hardworking, smash mouth team. But yeah, I think that where they're at now is exactly who they're going to continue being. I think that when you get to like that 6th, 7th week, you kind of know where your team's at and what type of style of play is going to be what you do for the year. Granted, teams still grow and can change on the fly, but I do think that that's what the Aggies want to be. Is they want to win up front, they want to dominate the trenches, and they want that to be the staple of what their team is, and be the staple of, hey, it doesn't matter who we go against, we're still going to be able to win up front, which is ultimately going to win you football games.
Max, I do want to kind of discuss a little bit of the other teams in the SEC, right? Because I think this weekend is going to go a long way beyond if A&M is able to take care of business in Starkville, which is not a guarantee, but I like their chances based on the numbers and the level of team and the different coaching philosophies. But you look at what's going to happen there in Fayetteville with Arkansas and LSU, and I feel like either way A&M wins, right? Because if Arkansas can take care of business against LSU, it kind of legitimizes them, and then that victory over them looks better. But if LSU wins, they're going to come in here as maybe the 7th team of the country, and A&M has every opportunity. That's going to be a hard game. There's no doubt about it. But that could be a statement win for Mike Elko more than what the Missouri game was.
Absolutely. I agree. I think that especially with, LSU has kind of proven themselves throughout the season with winning more games and winning some close games. I think that we come into that week, and I like your point with Arkansas playing them this upcoming week. I really do think that Arkansas is going to give them a run for their money. I think that Arkansas is a very good team up front defensively, and I think that they're going to cause some problems for them. But either way, for us, it's either going to make that Arkansas win look really good for us, especially being able to go in there and beat them with Marcel at quarterback. And I do think that it's also going to, if they do win, if LSU does win, it's going to put us in a really good situation to have that be our proving ground game where it's like, okay, this isn't, if A&M can beat, they beat a top 10 team, but people were saying that Missouri maybe wasn't, the team that we thought they were. But, oh, wow, they had another top 10 win that happened. I think that that's the point where that kind of like balancing I'm not sure if they're really a good contender. I think that conversation kind of goes out the door if the next 2 weeks we go out and we win these 2 games. I think that it puts us at the forefront of the conversation of, okay, they're not just a maybe contender, they are a contender. I know that Coach Elko is looking forward to these next 2 weeks, and I know that he's looking forward to continue to put staples on this season and statements as to, hey, we're the real deal. So it's going to be exciting.
Max, I like to do this, and I've done it a couple different times this season, but as more information is presented, it gives me more data points, right? So before the season, there were some question marks that were talking points, right? Can the offensive line protect? Well, check. Can the secondary cover? Will Lee's been phenomenal. There have been some moments that haven't been great, but again, moments. A big play here, a big play there. But for the most part, especially what we saw against Missouri, fantastic, right? So those are some of the special teams. I think special teams, we haven't had a big play, but special teams as a unit is completely, it's a much more organized, well-coached area. So when you look at these 3 areas that were big concerns, not so much of a concern anymore, right? I mean, you're obviously still monitoring as the teams get better, but trending in the exact direction we need it to.
Absolutely. I think that you're 100% right. I think that in all the areas that were maybe question marks for the team this year, they've come out and they've flipped those on their heads to strengths. I think I think that Coach Elko is a defensive coach, and whenever he was here, he coached the secondary and did safeties. But the guy that he brought in to help out with that unit, Jordan Peterson, is phenomenal. He's a fantastic coach who's done a great job with sculpting the culture of that unit. And yeah, there's been a few big plays here and there, but that's kind of expected whenever you're switching defenses and having to take on a whole new identity as a defense. But yeah, they've done a great job with switching there. And then, the special teams has been, I think, one of the more consistent things that's made a ton of growth. Randy Bond has improved a lot since last season, and not like he struggled last year, but man, he's been hitting big field goals. He's been helping us with, getting points on the board. And when you can have drives where you're getting points maybe not touchdowns, but you're getting points every single drive, that sets you up to win football games. And special teams plays a huge part in that. And then Tyler White being able to help out with the field position game. I mean, you saw that phenomenal punt in the Missouri game. I don't know if I've ever seen a punt that was that perfect, picture perfect. But when you can have good special teams play on top of solid defensive and offensive play, it plays a much bigger factor than people give it credit for. And it puts you in positions to win games. So it's been awesome to see the culture that Coach Elko has brought in and the way that he has shaped the identity of our units, offense, defense, and special teams. It's been really cool to see the turnaround.
Max, great stuff, brother. Thanks so much for your time, buddy.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
Take care. Gig 'em. Max right there on the Boss Firearms Hotline. We'll hit a break a moment now for Lewis Engineering. You can find them in Marshall, Texas, but they take care of you all around the world, guys. Family owned and operated. It's run by a great Aggie, Doug Lewis. I tell you guys this. His parents went to Texas. Don't hold that against him. He's actually smart. He went to Texas A&M. He loves Texas A&M. His great-grandfather started this family business back in the day during Vietnam. He made handheld signal flares that they still make to this day there at Lewis Engineering. And they manufacture mostly munitions for the U.S. Department of Defense, but they're looking to take on any metal fabrication project that's out there. Aerospace industry, they take care of. Automotive industry, they take care of. They are fantastic. 40 employees in a family owned and operated out of a 50,000 square foot facility. They specialize in high volume machining and metal plating projects. So if you need more than 100,000 pieces, let them be the people for you. A turnkey supplier. They are fantastic. Feel free to call Doug right now. 903-938-6754. That is 903-938-6754. Or visit them at lewisengineeringco.com. That's lewisengineeringco.com. And we are back on TexAgs Live. We are presented by David Gardner's Jewelers in the Rollo Insurance Studio. Actually, I want to talk to you guys about Duck Camp for a moment because they're hooking me up. I just ordered some gear from them so for my hunt coming up with Bird Dog. The gear is fantastic, guys. And what I love about Duck Camp is that you can wear it to the gym, which I like to go there from time to time. You can wear it out and about. It looks stylish. You can wear it for your hunts. You can wear it for your fishing events. So basically, if you want to be a real dude, you go get some Duck Camp gear. They're fitted, they're comfortable, they're fantastic. They have new sunline protection. They've been tested in the backcountry of Alaska to the dove fields of Texas, and they're made for people that live for the moments out there where they're fish to catch, bird to hunt, and the time to kill. Check out the gear, duckcamp.com. Torniak at the Angry Elephant News and Social Center. Got a text for us?
Yes, we have a text from David in Temple, and he was asking, what is the TU record versus top 5 teams at home since 1988 or 1989? Can't believe they've had that many top 5 home games in the Big 12 over the years. I did some research, and the last time they won at home to a top 5 team was in 1999 against number 3 Nebraska.
Huh. See, Caitlin, you're like an AI machine, right? You're like ChatGPT. Torniak GBT. All right, when we come back on TexAgs Live, Ryan Brauninger. We'll have Recruiting Country brought to you by Caprock Health System. That and more at TexAgs Live. And we are back on TexAgs Live. We are presented by David Gardner's Jewelers in this amazing Rollo Insurance studio. It is time for Recruiting Country, brought to you by Caprock Health System, a faster patient-centered revolution in care with 2 ERs in the Bryan College Station area, the original 24-hour ER in South College Station on William D. Fitch, and the full-service hospital with ER on Bryan and Briarcrest online, caprockhealthsystem.com. And we've got Ryan Brauninger with us.
Good morning. Shorts and hoodie weather.
Your favorite?
My favorite. Perfect for a insulated man like myself.
You are wearing a hoodie that I would wear. I like that hoodie. Very good. Very good.
Well,
you know, I'm part of the community now.
Yeah, you are. You're a big hunter, fisher, outdoorsman.
I even moved to boxer. I'm doing man things.
I heard
I pumped
your
gas
segment
the other day
with Billy yesterday.
Yeah.
I heard your segment about your beard, then his. You know, you got to punch back at the guy. I've told you this before.
Yeah.
You give him way too much rein to just try to pummel you on air.
You know, it's from this military fake background that I don't have, that I watch on YouTube, that I respect authority, as I expect those to respect my authority as well.
Well, here's the thing with, you sound like Cartman now, respect my authority. With Billy, though, you earn more respect with Billy if you jab back.
Sure, but here's what's going to happen. He's got a temper. I've got a temper. And it just doesn't go well. So I'd rather.
Come on, man.
I don't want to hurt my boss. That's just the bottom line.
How much caffeine you drink a day?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I drink a Yeti and a half, but I do half calf.
Half calf?
So I can have more coffee. Yeah.
Oh, you're trying. Well.
So I want more caffeine. So too much caffeine is not good for your sleep, obviously. And Dr. Mike Israetel, the great doctor that he is, I like to stop my caffeine intake by 10:30 a.m. if possible, and I do half calf so I can enjoy more throughout the morning.
Right, you try to extend the life of your coffee. I've been doing that too. I pour a protein shake in it.
There you go.
When I get about halfway done with my coffee, pour a protein shake in it, extend the life of your coffee. But the reason why I'm asking is because I think, maybe you're not supposed to have caffeine until after 90 minutes after you wake up.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Are you holding to that?
No.
Okay.
I've done that. I've done it for a while. Because I have to be alert for this show, somewhat alert. That delays my alertness, and I think.
Do you see do you know if it's like a placebo effect or does it actually work?
It's both.
It's both. It can't be both.
It depends on the person. I think it depends on, like for me.
No. It either has to work or it's a placebo effect.
It didn't work for me.
Okay.
And I think the coffee might be a placebo effect that I need it to have my creative juices.
Yeah. So have you tried to do the show without coffee and you can't do it?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I can do it, but I just feel like a zombie.
Low maintenance.
And I think
low energy Nuño.
Yeah, I think people enjoy that. Obviously, I'm not a fiery personality anymore. I've taken a back page to that. Like I'm just kind of chill now.
Yeah, you're so chill.
I am chill.
You're chill. You're outdoorsman. You got a beard.
Is it really a beard though?
I mean, you look like Desi Arnaz.
That's a good-looking dude right there. Good Cuban community right there. Hey, we should probably.
Or Julio Iglesias.
He's Spanish.
Okay.
I'm more of an Enrique guy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You need a fake mole.
I need a fake mole, but good resume.
You might want to stay away.
Musical resume.
I've heard that not to get off of and on the current pop culture topics, but maybe we stay away from Enrique for a little bit.
He's been at a Diddy party?
Oh well, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't want to make accusations.
I don't know anything about him.
I see things on my scrolls every morning.
I'm going to Google.
Everything's alleged, right?
Kasuga. I like saying it like that. Kasuga? Is that how you pronounce it?
Helaman Kasuga.
Helaman Kasuga. He's going to be announcing tomorrow. Any vibe, feel right now?
Still feel good about A&M's chances there. Every week we write a recruiting article. Jason or myself, we alternate every week. And I think if A&M's able to land Helaman Kasuga, my article next week is just going to be about what we're learning, not only about Colin Klein as a recruiter, but maybe as the entire staff as recruiters. And I said last week, or the last time I was on, I think Jason was on last week, but I don't think 2025 is going to be the set in stone example of how this coaching staff is going to attack each recruiting cycle. I still feel like in their minds they came in behind on this 2025 class, and so they were really playing catch up. And we're going to talk about how the rest of the class may be structured going forward a little bit later. But for right now, if you start looking at individual coaches, I think we're getting a little glimpse of how it's going to go going forward, but over an overarching class-wide view, I think 2026 will look a little bit different than 2025 because 2026 is where they've been able to get established, get a foothold in all the recruitments, understand who the decision makers are in the recruitments outside of the kids, right? Because every recruitment is different. So if I'm recruiting Christian Nuño, he may have important people that he needs to talk to. If I'm recruiting Isla Nuño, she may have different important people that I need to talk to. Every recruitment is different, right? So understanding the people involved in the inner circles of each recruitment, it takes a little while. And so, yes, this is their first technical full cycle, but they still came in behind the 8 ball in terms of understanding the relationships and the important roles in each recruitment. So that being said, that's why I think 2026 is where we're going to get a real feel for what it's going to look like, how they're going to structure their class, where they're going to make big pushes, all that kind of thing. But if A&M is able to land Helaman Kasuga tomorrow, then Colin Klein, which we knew nothing about as a recruiter, I mean, he got Avery Johnson. It was a state of Kansas kid at Kansas State. How many times does the state of Kansas produce a quarterback of that level? Not very often. So it did say something that he was able to keep him in state while he was in Manhattan. But since he's come to Texas A&M, we really didn't know what he was going to be like as a recruiter. And if they get Helaman Kasuga, then you'd have to say Colin Klein is 2 for 2 on his guys. Like in the state of Texas in the class of 2025, I think they rifled through all the quarterbacks. They did extensive research on them. They looked at them. And I think one guy came out where they said, okay, if we're going to go in-state, this is going to be our guy. And it was Keelan Russell at Duncanville, who's committed to Alabama. But from the very onset, when they got established here, and it was really kind of January, February when we started hearing Hassan Longstreet's name, is like, hey, this is the guy that Klein really wants. Above everybody in the country, after pouring through all the film, this is Colin Klein's guy. He went and got him. We heard the same thing about Helaman Kasuga after he came to camp over the summer, where he skyrocketed in terms of priority on Colin Klein's big board for 2026 quarterback. So if he's able to nab him, then he's 2 for 2 on his number one guy. Now, you can make an argument of who should be number one. Should A&M have prioritized different guys? It doesn't matter. He's the quarterback coach. He's the offensive coordinator. This is his offense. Mike Elko has given him full reign to call that offense, implement the offense, and then pick the pieces that he wants for his offense. So in Colin Klein's mind, again, if they get Kasuga tomorrow, that's 2 for 2, and that's a pretty strong start at the most important position on the field.
That's pretty fantastic. And I am of the opinion, who you guys think works for your offense, go do it, right? I'm so bought into this regime until I have a reason not to. And I think that's how it should be.
Well, look at no further than, I mean, look what Diego Pavia has done for Vanderbilt's offense. And he wasn't even recruited out of high school. And there's going to be guys like that fall through the cracks every so often. But it's more about, go back to Johnny, when Johnny was recruited here. And the best thing maybe that happened to Johnny in his college career was that Kevin Sumlin came in with Cliff Kingsbury's offense, and he was the perfect fit, whereas the National Recruiting Services had him as a 3-star recruit. So it's about finding fit, especially at that position. If you've got an offense that is as layered and wants the quarterback to do as many things as Colin Klein's offense.
I do want to ask you about Hassan because I saw it on Twitter. He had a really good weekend.
Very efficient.
I'm trying to see if I can find his numbers, but just talk a little bit about.
I just wrote about him yesterday. I think 10 of 13 for 287. Nick, can you pull up maybe my Bronny's Best? It's at the top of the Bronny's Best article from yesterday. But he had a 33-yard touchdown run as well. He's had a good year, but I thought that he was also banged up to start the year, but now that he's healthy, I thought that was his most efficient night as a quarterback this year. I think he accounted for 4 touchdowns. Nick, do you have the numbers yet?
He's popping in.
Yeah, it's 10 of 13, 216, 3 touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown as well.
So 10 of 13, 216, 3 touchdowns, and you said a rushing touchdown?
Yeah, it was like a 33-yard rushing touchdown. Yeah. And when you look at the tape, I also linked it in that article. If you want to go look at it, I'll link the highlights. The throws that he made for the touchdowns, that's when you're starting, okay, now you see the elite skill set that Colin Klein saw. Like ripping throws on the seam, slant routes on time, and good ball placement to allow catch and run ability. The more I watch quarterbacks. Like the more I've done this scouting, recruiting, analyst thing, I've had different traits go up on my list of importance for different positions than maybe I would have 3 or 4 years ago. So like offensive line, I feel like understanding the game of football, that trait is going way up.
Right.
Because you could have incredible measurables, great feet, great flexibility, good power. If you don't know who to block, what does it matter?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, and for quarterbacks, I've gone down on arm strength and up on arm talent. Well, what is arm talent? Arm talent means, is the ball coming out on time? Do I understand trajectory? Do I put the ball in a position where my receiver can not only make a play on it, but do something with the ball after it's caught? That's what makes Connor so good. That's what makes Connor so good coming out of high school. Connor doesn't have elite arm strength, but Connor has elite arm talent. And when Connor's going good, like we saw last Saturday against Mizzou, he puts the ball in a position, not only it's an easy catchable ball for the receiver, but they're able to do something with it afterward. And if the receivers are, somebody is screaming back there.
Is that Nick?
No, it's like, somebody is so loud.
Who do you think it is? It's Allie.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Who is it?
Allie.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I heard. I thought there was a baby.
Jeez, it sounded like it was a baby squealing.
Yeah, baby seals are being punched.
Yeah, but
Thanks, Clyde.
You know what? And I know Billy gives me a lot of grief for talking loud when I get back there, but I don't have a piercing kind of tone to my voice like maybe somebody that was just screaming in the back.
Yeah.
So if we could make this room, this brand new beautiful studio,
beautiful,
alley-proof, then we'll be set.
It's impossible. Can I ask you a surface level question? Because it is surface level, but I'd like your take on it. The last few years, and again, different regime, but like A&M had to prove the results to continue not losing guys. Like they recruited great, but to not lose guys, they had to show it on the field, right? This recruiting class is pretty full, right? Like, can they add to this group, like as well as the season's going, or not lose? You know what I'm saying?
The interesting part about it is they can add to it because I think in this new era of college football, numbers matter way less. It used to be a huge exercise for Jason and myself and even Billy. At the onset of each recruiting cycle, you're going, okay, how many are they going to take?
Yeah.
And you start counting scholarships, who's leaving based off seniority. You know, this was 3 or 4 years ago before the portal came in, and then it kind of took us a little bit a few years ago. Okay, these numbers really don't matter. Like if you only sign 20, who cares? You can go get some more in the portal. But if you sign 29, who cares? You're not going to take as many in the portal, and you're going to have guys leave inevitably that you don't think are leaving. It's just the nature of the beast now. So numbers matter way less. That being said, it doesn't seem to me that we're only a month and a half away from signing day. They moved signing day way up. I don't know if you're aware of that. It's like early December now. So
is it right before the conference championship game?
It's between conference championship game and
the first playoff game.
Or maybe it's before, maybe it's between end of the regular season and first conference. But it's in that 2-week window.
Right.
I lost my train of thought. You cut me off, and now
I'm sorry.
It's okay. You're the host of the show.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want to.
Well, I just like to interject thoughts.
And you're
like right now, you've lost your train.
Yeah, you've intimidated me with your beard.
Yeah.
What I was saying is the numbers matter in the last month and a half. It seems to me that A&M is not going to expand their net on the high school players anymore. Now, they're still after a few guys that remain at the top of their list, and they would absolutely take. I think Toby Hostrup, the defensive end from Maid Creek, is going to be an absolute take from now until the end. Outside of that, there may be 1 or 2 more kids across the country that they are all in on, or maybe one of these high-profile guys that they missed out on early, Jerome Miles at receiver. Yep. Maybe those kids want to circle back and start calling A&M, especially if they end the back half of the season the way they've started the first half. But outside of that, man, I think their player pool of who they're really scouting and recruiting in the class of 2025 is fairly small. And by fairly small, I'm thinking like a few players across the country. So Toby Hostrup is the main guy in the state of Texas, unless I'm just completely missing on somebody and I'm blanking. But outside of that, man, it's pretty thin. So I think they're happy with what they've got committed. If they're able to keep that group, you know, Oregon's still after Noah McHale, LSU, Alabama, USC still after Keati Armstrong. Like, there's some battles that they've still got to fight. Texas with Chase Randall and Kelshawn Johnson. All this stuff, they've got to keep the guys that are committed, and that'll be a dogfight in some instances, but they're not overextending themselves in terms of new targets in the class of 2025. Last week at this time, or I guess 8 days ago, their players in state that they were after were Nelson McGuire and Toby Hostrup.
Right.
Nelson McGuire commits, so it's just really Hostrup in the 25 class.
How do we feel about that?
I feel good. I like his ties to A&M. I think his comfortability level in College Station because his sister goes here. I think that's a big deal for him and his family. I'm going to see him play tomorrow night, so I want to talk to him. They've had a pretty good year. They could get themselves right in the playoff discussion in that KDISD district with a win. So hopefully they're able to handle business, and I'll talk to him afterward. But based on everything I've heard, like A&M is all in, full on recruitment. Like, we're not going to worry about what we got at numbers at that position. We think this is a special player, an impact player. Maybe because of his background, he's not as immediately ready to play as a Marco Jones, who's also an edge rusher in this class. But down the road, if you just think about what this kid could look like what his game could look like in 18 months from now, you're going, it's well worth the expenditure.
Yeah, no doubt. Let's do one more before we hit a break here. This caught my interest. You sent me an email. Receiver. There's some receiver that's considering circling back? Is that
no? That's what I was saying. Like
that
would be a position where if one of those kids
would circle back there.
If one of those kids, one of those guys they missed out on called them, Khalid Lockett,
right,
Manny Choice, any of those guys called them and said, "Hey, I'm really I don't know where I'm at with my commitment to X school. I'd like to come back and see." I think they would obviously entertain that. But receiver is a position where I think they are, if they can hold TK Norman, they can hold Kelshawn. They would have to be an elite player at the high school level because I think they're going to try to make some hay in the transfer portal.
All right, we're going to talk about the portal on the other side. If you want to text Bronny any questions, you can do that on the Little Sluggers text line. We'd appreciate you doing that. Little Sluggers is age-appropriate baseball fundamental classes in Aggieland, Houston, Austin, Brenham for kids 2 to 8. Sign up for a free trial at cotosports.com. That is COTO Sports.com. When we come back on TexAgs, we'll talk a little bit about that transfer portal. But right now, we're talking Caldwell Country Chevrolet. They're on Highway 21 in Caldwell. They're online at CaldwellCountryChevrolet.com. You want great customer service? You go to Caldwell Country Chevrolet. You may not even know you crave great customer service until you have bad customer service. You're like, guys, I just need a little help with my oil change. I just need you guys to come pick up my vehicle. Luckily for you, Caldwell Country Chevrolet has complimentary pickup and delivery for their service customers. They have free oil changes for life on the purchase of your vehicle. And when we're talking about deals, that's the place to go. You've got incredible deals that start with great trade-in value and, of course, the price of the vehicles. You can check it all out online at CaldwellCountryChevrolet.com. It's about a 15-minute drive, the edge of Bryan to the beginnings of Caldwell. Short conversation away, but you'll see the difference when you step on the lot and do business with the great people there at Caldwell Country Chevrolet. Highway 21 in Caldwell, online, CaldwellCountryChevrolet.com. All right, we're back on TexAgs Live. We're presented by David Gardner's Jewelers Rollo Insurance Studio. Recruiting Country brought to you by Caprock Health System. Bronny, we've got a studio audience right now.
How cool is this? I feel a little pressure.
So you grew up in Houston, right?
Beaumont.
Kind of close by, right?
I don't count Beaumont as Houston, but it's swampy and marshy similar.
But you grew up, you watched Houston sports.
I'm a Houston sports fan, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
I got some old TV friends in the house. Fody Kalergis is here, Alona Carson. They brought some coworkers, so we're just all hanging out. They're real reporters. I was not a real reporter. I was a
you
sports
work
reporter.
with these people?
Oh, yeah.
And they're still friends with you?
I don't know if friends is the right, they feel obligated.
Do they know Joe Gleason?
They do know Joe Gleason.
Joe Gleason is the GOAT of Houston sports, right?
Yeah, Joe Gleason is the best. I know we have some text messages for you, but before that, let's talk about portal season incoming, Bronny, because I think if you look at the way Coach Elko attacked the portal this year, like the guy, and he even talked about it this weekend at the press conference, the right people for this program, and I expect that to be the case moving forward, especially as it becomes a place that more people want to come to.
The right people is a correct way to saying his hit rate was high. Right, and so you've got to feel confident that in a very short time, he and his staff, the organizational structure that he's built, did a great job of identifying really good players and then putting together a plan to go get those players in a very short window. Remember, he got here in late November, and this portal class had come together by, what was it, January 20th? I can't remember, but it was right before the semester started when they closed on their final portal targets. And remember, there was that run right after the new year where it was like boom, boom, boom. Every day they were getting portal commitments. And look at the hit rate on all of them. I mean, I don't know what Marcus Ratcliffe had coming out of San Diego State in terms of portal offers, but A&M was able to identify him, think he was an impact player. They get him to campus, and I don't know how much that recruitment was celebrated by the Aggie fan base, and look what it's turned into. And there's a bunch of them, and they're all, I went through it like a couple of weeks ago, like about Elko as a recruiter. There were people that had questions about Elko as a recruiter, and I'm like, how can you definitively say anything about a brand new head coach that just got to the head job here with all of Texas A&M's resources, its alumni network, all the things that it provides outside of football that he has never had at his disposal to take advantage of. And what do we know about him as a human being? Extremely cerebral, intelligent, organized. You really thought that he was just going to take all of those advantages and do nothing with them? No, he was going to be as resourceful with them as he could, and he's been so far. So I know it's just one class in the portal, and there's no way to build that's not enough evidence. That right now that's just a data point. It's not enough evidence to definitively say this is how he's going to be this successful every year. But I do think that it does give you confidence in what they're going to be able to do in this portal window coming up.
Ronnie, what about some area high school teams? Consol's having a great year. College Station High is always good. What does it look like?
I wanted to highlight them because if you look around the Brazos Valley right now, and Greg Tepper from Dave Campbell's Texas Football wrote an article recently about pound for pound, what's the best area of high school football in the state of Texas. And he looked at South Dallas with DeSoto and Duncanville. And then you look at the east side of Houston, like Atascocita, C.E. King, North Shore, Summer Creek, that whole, that Humble area, Northeast Houston. He looked at Southwest Houston, Fort Bend County. He looked at some of the areas in San Antonio with Cibolo Steel and Converse Judson and San Antonio Johnson. And he factored in a lot of different areas of what does success look like. And pound for pound, the best area of the state for high school football right now is the Brazos Valley. And I wanted to talk about A&M Consolidated, number 3 in the state, undefeated in 5A Division I. College Station High School, number 6 in the state, one loss to A&M Consolidated 5A Division I. There's a real chance that those two schools could meet in the playoffs with a trip to the state title on the line. That's where we're at in the College Station schools. Brian Rudder is 7-0, Nick? 6-0 for the first time in a long time, and they've got a game against Brenham, another Brazos Valley team. Brenham is number 10 in 5A Division II. If Brian Rudder is able to beat Brenham on Friday night, Brian Rudder is going to be ranked, which is an incredible job for Coach Izar. We know about what Franklin does year in, year out in all the state championships. So, and I think that they're going to be set themselves up in 3A Division I. Nobody's talking about them, which is probably where Coach Fannin really wants to be. So I wanted to highlight the job that all those coaches are doing here locally and just how cool it is that everybody thinks about College Station, and the first thing is Texas A&M, right? It's still a university college town. But what's going on outside of just what's happening on campus and with A&M football and Mike Elko, you start diving into it. This is a football region. And so those coaches, those programs should be really proud of what they've accomplished.
Let's go to the Angry Elephant News and Social Center. Caitlin, do you have anything you want to provide? I know there's some commentary on the YouTube page.
Yes, we got a chat in on the YouTube from a writer named Pothole that says,
good name.
I've heard that Vanderbilt stud tight end Eli Stowers was interested in playing ball at A&M. Wish we could have gotten him. He's carrying their receiving game.
He played at A&M.
He did play at A&M. You're right. He signed with A&M out of high school as a quarterback from Denton Geyer.
He transitioned to tight end while he was here. And
yeah, he made the move to tight end while he was here and then went to Vanderbilt, and I was leading Vanderbilt. And one of the better stories in college football and receiving, Eli Stowers is a phenomenal human being. He's a great kid. I don't think he has any ill will at all toward Texas A&M, and I'm super happy for him and his family that he has gotten the chance to succeed the way he has.
All right, so Brian, give us a little timeline. What we can expect? We've got Heisman Kasuga announcement tomorrow, and what else over the next week or two?
Yeah, I don't think that we're going to have anything new pop up unless a 2026 gets a wild hair. We are still monitoring Toby Hoship, as I mentioned at Katie Maid Creek, because all this recruiting is new to him. Everybody by now, if you follow recruiting, you know his story. But the short version is hasn't played football for very long at all, and has blown up in terms of offers. It's one of the more unique recruiting stories that I've ever covered in my time as an analyst. I've never seen a kid go from 0 offers, 0 interest in week 1 of a high school football season to 10 days later having 25 offers. I've never seen that. So this is all new to him, and he's still trying to process it. He's been to A&M. He was here in Kyle Field for the Mizzou game. I think the Aggies are going to have a great chance to land him, but I also believe he's going to take a few more visits. But I'm going to get down there and talk to him tomorrow, and we'll see what he says.
Thank you, Bronny.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. When we come back here on TexAgs Live, we'll talk to Peter Burns of the SEC Network.
Hey, by the way, I don't mean to cut you off.
Oh, please cut me off.
I'm in a group chat. I'm texting right now back and forth with Hayden Schott and Jay Slavolette.
Okay.
They're complete buffoons.
What are they saying?
It doesn't matter what they're saying, but like they're arguing with each other in a group text that I'm in.
For those who don't know, they're Aggie baseball superstars, and they come by studio quite a bit. So,
but it's just. Did you watch the Texas Aggies United interview I did with those two?
Not yet, no.
It was last week when you were out.
Uh-huh.
It was
off the rails.
15 minutes, 90% of it's satire, and I couldn't even ask real questions. They bickered back and forth.
Those are the best interviews.
It got a lot of views, and it got a lot of responses because it was like comedy. It was like a stand-up routine for both of them.
Well,
I was trying to be serious and ask them about Coach Early, and it was just I wasn't getting anywhere.
No, I got it. You know what you should do is take them to Milliken Reserve. Tonight at Milliken Reserve, s'mores and stars. That's right up your alley.
It's right up Jason Hayden's alley.
Yeah, October 16th, that's today, obviously, 7 to 9 o'clock. Sunrise Coffee, October the 17th, 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. Here's another one for you. Volunteer at the farm on the 18th, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m.
My wife loves farm animals. She has a horse.
Yeah? Does she really?
We eventually want to have land of a farm and all kind of stuff.
Well, Milliken Reserve is the place for you. Check out the website, millikenreserve.com, to connect families to nature and to each other. Real estate, great events, you name it. Milliken Reserve, millikenreserve.com. Welcome back in. TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Let's go to the Boss Firearms Hotline. We're joined by Peter Burns of the SEC Network and, of course, ESPN. PB, good morning, buddy. How you been?
I'm doing better now. I've barely survived. I've been barely surviving all year long. So it happened in Missouri and then a wild weekend in Baton Rouge. I mean, then I had basketball media days. What the hell day is it? I have no idea. Is it Wednesday?
It is Wednesday, and I feel that same way for us here in College Station. But the weird part, I mean, it's not a weird part. It's just this is the first time in a long time where mid-season we feel really good about the trajectory since the 2020 season.
Yeah, how crazy is that, right? I mean, you think about it after, the first weekend and you have that game against Notre Dame, which, obviously a good game. You're thinking, oh, great, here we go again. And yet I don't know what team outside of the one that resides in Austin right now, maybe the one in Baton Rouge, that feels like, hey, we got things rolling. Just the way of, the last time we saw A&M, the way they took it to Missouri, you feel, like, hey, the vibes are good. You've got Mississippi State next on the docket, and you don't feel like that's a game that should, at least in any theory, challenge you. So, yeah, I mean, vibes are high. And we were just talking about that today. I had Fozzie Whitaker, who was my co-host of my SiriusXM show. We were talking about, can you imagine if A&M, who has not been to the college football playoff at some point, gets not only just a bid, but has an opportunity to host a game, one of those college football games in Kyle Field in front of 110,000? Good Lord, that place will be rocking.
Well, Peter, I want to ask about Mississippi State because they're 0-3, yet they seem like a team that can cause problems for good teams. Obviously, the game against Georgia was interesting. Go back to the Texas game. It was, 7-6 with a few minutes left in the first half. Obviously, Texas blew them out. They seem like a team that's figured out their quarterback situation and how to make games at least interesting.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be. I mean, again, if we're talking about a A&M squad that I think is pretty complete, then it shouldn't be an interesting game. I mean, I think Georgia, if you go back and look at what Georgia was trying to do, I think teams look at State right now and they try to almost look them as, as a team that they can do some game planning. Like at Georgia last week, they threw the ball like 60 times against Mississippi State. That wasn't because it was like that was the only game plan to win. I think that was, to put on a lot of film for this Georgia-Texas game that's happening in Austin this week, and to kind of play a little chess game of going, oh, well, maybe they're a passing team now, and I think they're really going to try to run the ball against Texas this week. So I think that's the same thing that Texas had with them earlier in the season. So, I mean, if you're going to tell, I just don't foresee a game, and strange things have happened this year, but I don't foresee a game in which the style that Elko plays defense, they like to run the ball, provides an opportunity or a path for victory for Mississippi State this week.
Peter, let's talk about this massive showdown in Fayetteville. You've got Arkansas, a team that is much better than initially advertised, and LSU, who after just a week one issue has really figured things out. Talk about the job Brian Kelly's done and what that game could set up in a massive showdown in College Station the week after if both teams take care of business.
No, I hope so. I mean, that game is going to be unbelievable if that's the case. And I told somebody this, this week as I was leaving LSU. I was like, I was more afraid of Arkansas and at A&M than I am about Alabama at home right now for LSU, just because of the way the matchups are. This is a tough game for LSU. How does Brian Kelly continue to do a good job of, not being a victim of their own success? You have such an emotional victory. I mean, last second, you never had the lead against Ole Miss. The crowd was incredible, and you win that game. How do you turn right back around and face an Arkansas team that's coming off a bye? Now, I will tell you this. If Taylor Green was 100% healthy, I don't know if I wouldn't pick Arkansas to win this game, believe it or not. I think defensively they've gotten better. Travis Williams did a good job with their scheme. But the fact that Taylor Green's not 100%, I think it might limit what Arkansas can do with Bobby Petrino. But, they're kind of this YOLO back up against the wall type mentality, and they've had the lead in every single one of those games. So I think LSU barely wins what I think ends up being a close game, a shootout, ends up being like 31-28, something kind of real close again. It sets up a de facto college football playoff game type feeling in Kyle Field the weekend after.
Talking to Peter Burns on the Boss Firearms Hotline. PB, let's go back to Austin for a moment and what a win and a loss would mean for both programs, right? Texas, they can afford a loss, but they want to show everybody that they are legitimately the top team in college football. Georgia has not played like the Georgia we're used to yet. They're number 5. A victory over Texas kind of changes the entire trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I look at it as like for Texas, you almost punch a ticket into the top 12. But the way the rest of their schedule is, the only team that I think that would give them a little run for their money, of course, would be you guys in College Station in that final on Thanksgiving weekend. So, you know, for me, I look at this, go, you win this, you basically you're in the playoff. I actually had this as like my 4th most interesting game, an important game of the weekend, because even with Georgia too, you know, if they lose that game, we're talking about a Georgia team that I think because of their schedule, I think they could win out after this in 10-2 after having a big win against Clemson. It was looking pretty good. After looking good against Alabama, you know, almost coming back to win that game, I think that if you run the table at 10-2, you can still get in. So, you know, I think like Kentucky, Florida is honestly a more interesting game because of what happens if either of those two late teams lose. What happens with those respective head coaches going forward?
Talking to Peter Burns here on TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. A game in a different kind of feel, but Tennessee, Alabama, I feel like it's not an elimination game because there's still too much left, but it feels like it's certainly close, especially when you consider what Bama has over the next 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing for Alabama as you look at it, is that what Alabama is this, and that's the danger part about Kalen DeBoer taking over for Nick Saban. It's not the fact of all these players are going to transfer out. Is how do you make sure there's not a backslide? How do you make sure that you don't put it in a different gear? Because Alabama fans, I mean, you know, for the last 20 seasons, basically, they've known success, and now people are questioning, hey, how do you lose to Vanderbilt of all people? And then, hell, they should have lost last week after the onside kick to South Carolina. So they're just not making the adjustments that Nick was known for. You know, offensively, they're still good, but Tennessee, that place is going to be rocking. But Tennessee is dealing with issues as well, too, right? Like, you know, in the last 6 games that they've played against SEC opponents, in 5 of them, they've scored 25 points or less. So they haven't been these offensive juggernauts that we thought that they were going to be right from the jump. So I still like Tennessee because I think Tennessee's going to be able to run the ball. I think that they're going to get away from passing the ball. They'll run the ball more with Nico and his legs, and I just don't know if Alabama's capable of making those decisions. And that crowd, I mean, after what happened in 2022, and they took the goalpost down, it's ready to go, and they're a desperate football team as well.
Peter, a low-key game that I'm interested in is this Kentucky-Florida game because I feel like both teams have, well, especially with DJ Lagway now being the quarterback for Florida after what happened to Graham Mertz, but like both are capable of beating good teams. Both need this game significantly to kind of change where they're going to land.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously the biggest game is for Billy Napier. You got a bye week coming up next week for the Gators, and if you know, you should have beat Tennessee. Billy Napier should have gone for 2 against Tennessee when he had them over against the ropes. I'm still shocked, you know, some 5 days later or 4 days later that he did not decide to do that. But for me, you know, if Billy Napier loses this game, I don't know if Billy Napier is there in 2 weeks, guys. I just don't. Like, you know, most coaching changes are done when there's a bye week and you can kind of get everybody on the same page, especially if Kentucky wins that game going away over at home. If you win it and Lagway plays good, at least you can say, hey, give him a chip in a chair, give him an opportunity. And they've been playing some good ball. They just, you know, they played so bad against Miami that we just can't oversee it. I mean, or you know, look past it. And right now, we know Miami to be a pretty darn good team. So I think it's monstrous for Billy Napier. But on the flip side of it, if Stoops loses this game, I think that would be like 6 straight that they've lost as far as a road game. I mean, 6 straight home games he's lost. So this one's on the road, but still, people are going to start worrying about, man, Mark Stoops went from flirting with A&M to all of a sudden can't even get this teams ready to go. So I honestly had that as the second most interesting or most important game for each program's future coming up this weekend.
Peter Burns with us here on TexAgs Live. Peter, let's talk about that Florida situation a little bit deeper. If they were to fire Billy Napier, do you think Lane Kiffin's the number one name on their list? Do you think they typically don't spend that kind of money on head coaches, right? Like, what direction do they go?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be the first person that they would kick the tires on would be Lane, and I think Lane would be willing to, listen. I think Lane will listen to everything, and I think that's part of the reason why, I'm so curious of how this plays out because, if you're sitting there and you're Ole Miss and you go 10-2 or and you run the table and you make the college football playoff. All these boosters that put that money into the collective, man, they're all excited. They're willing to do anything to keep with Lane, keep Lane there. On the flip side of it, you lose again, and all those guys that in a small town of Oxford that put all that money behind the collective, it didn't work. How apt are they to put up a fight for arguably a really, really disappointing game? Like, that's what I can't wait to find out about all these guys that put money into collective. Is what happens when you go all in and it doesn't work? Are you going to be able to go back to the drawing board and get those guys back, and open up their pocketbook again when they've already been kind of, torn? I don't know. So that's why I think this weekend, the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks for Lane Kiffin are months or make or break time, not only for Ole Miss, but what his coaching future is there.
Peter, let's close out back to A&M. For you, does it just come down to don't make dumb mistakes? I know you've struggled in Starkville before, talking about the Aggies, obviously. But don't make dumb mistakes, and you will win that game.
Yeah, I mean, again, I am kind of curious to see because one of the things that I was really impressed with Colin Klein and Mike Elko was their absolute confidence in Connor, right? It wasn't like Quinn Ewers, they kind of like worked him into the game plan against Oklahoma and kind of eased him in. Colin Klein said, no, the hell with that. Go throw darts. And I think that I love that mentality for him. So I think that's the mentality you have to take. Like, you're not going to be yellowing it and just, calling 4 verts all the time, but give Connor that same vote of confidence that you had. And I think that helped the wide receivers. I think they, it wasn't this conservative play calling. It was, we're Texas A&M. Who the hell are you? And that's the mentality I think Elko kind of carries around. And that's a swagger right now that's got to have TexAgs fans pumped up.
No doubt. That is Peter Burns there on the Boss Firearms Hotline. Thanks to our friends at Blue Delta Jeans. PB, we appreciate you, buddy.
See you, buddy.
Later, man. Peter Burns there on the Boss Firearms Hotline. We'll hit a break. We'll come back with some stats. Ethan Jones has got some juicy stats for us to get us ready for the game against Mississippi State. Right now, if your organization or business is looking for an opportunity to engage with Aggies, you need to check out the Association of Former Students. They bring Aggies of all ages together during events held throughout the year. Marquee events like Aggie Ring Day, All Aggie Hullabaloo, and Gathering welcome tens of thousands of guests. And there are many sponsorship and vendor opportunities available to get your brand in front of those attendees. These events offer a wide variety of both digital and in-person options to promote your brand. These options include title sponsorship naming. You've got on-site presence, activation, recognition, and social media posts, and much, much more. There's also advertising opportunities in both the Texas Aggie Magazine and the Aggie News newsletter, which are seen by over 230,000 people. So if your business is ready to engage with Aggies, choose a partner with the organization that's been supporting the Aggie Network for over 140 years. For more information on options available through the association, please email sponsorships@aggienetwork.com. It is TexAgs Live. We're presented by David Gardner's Jewelers Rollo Insurance Studio. We've got Ethan Jones in the hizzy. Hello, Ethan. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you?
I'm well. I know you've got some stats for us. Where do you want to start things off? Bye-week stats.
Let's start off with the defense.
Okay.
The defense throughout the season has been a bright spot, but especially over the last 2 games. So I wanted to compare our defense to the defenses of the teams above us, so the top 13 teams, how they have done against top 25 teams and how we've done against top 25 teams. So first, points allowed against top 25 teams, which is the 2 we've played, Notre Dame, Missouri. We only allow 16.5 points per game, which is 5th out of the top 14 teams. The other top 13 teams average 21.5 points per game allowed.
Okay.
Total yards allowed, 305, which ranks 5th. The other teams, 373.2. Passing yards allowed, 172 for us, which ranks 4th. The other teams, 252.1. Completion percentage, really good. Only 51% allowed, which is 3rd. The other teams, 63.1. Rushing yards allowed and yards per carry allowed were both 8th and 9th in those, so not as good. But against Missouri, we only allowed 68 rushing yards and yards per carry only 2.3, so we're really improving in that. Sacks, we've had 3 per game against top 25 teams, which is tied for 3rd, 2.2 for those other teams above us. Tackles for loss, 7.5 for us, 6.5 for the other teams. Opponent third down completion percentage, 25 for us, which is 3rd, 33.4 for the other teams. And then first downs allowed, 15.5 for us, which is tied 2nd, and then 18.7 for the other teams.
So outside of pretty much just forcing turnovers, they are top 5 in everything.
They're top,
almost top 5.
Top 5 in everything. And then if you took only the Missouri game, we'd also be top 5 in the rushing categories too. So a top 5 defense in almost every category when you take the top 14 teams against other top 25 teams.
Right. And so these numbers won't change this week, but potentially next week.
Next week they
against
will change.
LSU. All right. We have about a minute. Do you want to do anything offensively?
Yeah, let's do a Mississippi State preview. Compare our offense to their defense. Points per game. Our offense averaged 31.7 in the SEC. They allow 40.3, which is the worst. All these stats are just against SEC teams. Yards per play, 6.8 for us, which is 3rd in the SEC. 8.0 for them, which is last. Rushing yards per game, 226.7, 1st. We're awesome at that. They allow 190, which is 13th. Passing yards per game, 205.7, which is 11th. Not great, but they allow 353.7 pass yards per game against SEC teams last.
I also want to bring up those numbers, or we weren't such a pass-heavy team when Marcel was there because he was so spectacular with his legs.
Yeah, if you just take the Connor stats, we would, I think I have it right here, yeah, we'd rise up to 6th in the SEC in passing yards per game.
Which is hard to say because he played one game in the SEC. So
we'll see more.
Sacks allowed per game, 1.3. That's tied for 3rd. Not bad.
Yeah, that's really good. And they allow... they only get 0.67 per game, which is last. So I think we'll be able to hold them back on that.
Awesome, buddy. Thank you very much, Ethan. All right, tomorrow on TexAgs Live, Swopey, McGee, Aaron Torres, Jim Turner, all that, and of course your text messages and phone calls. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you mañana.